Hey,
What you think about when you're born into a fire? Let them burn it out. Sell them to the richest buyer. They wanna let the world decay. They tell us lies and fade away. We feel
it's like freaking 10 degrees here. It's wild. It took me hours to warm up the office. Like we're just now almost to 60 degrees.
Listen up now, because we're never dropping out. Beat the odds, beat the
I haven't been looking.
brains are bigger than the doubt. We've been thinking for ourselves, never let the truth fade away. This is bigger than ourselves, we won't let the world burn away. Burn away, we feel betrayed. We were raised to lose the race. Wake it through the back of the pack, kill it anyway. To blame, haters face the world's mistakes. Wake it through the back of the pack, kill it anyway. And we feel betrayed. We were raised to lose the race. Wake it through the back of the pack, kill it anyway. To blame, haters face the world's mistakes. Wake it through the back of the pack, kill it anyway.
So some weird stuff's going on. I probably won't be here super long. It started late trying to warm up the office, but we'll talk about some weird things.
Hey daddies, it's me, the Linda Binda from TikTok. I wanted to make this video because I wanted to thank you for watching Cold Beer Confessionals with Will Bird. I think that's just incredible. I've watched a few episodes and I'm just like very intrigued. But you know what I'm most intrigued in is Big Daddy's meat stick. I heard that it's very thick, like a good old German sausage. You know, Linda and her coochie loves that. Oh, never mind. Let's not go there. Anyways, I hope you have a good show and enjoy it as you can. There's a lot of weird things that go on, especially when it comes from the realm of Linda Bindaland. So, enjoy the show. Thanks for watching. Peace out.
Welcome, losers. We are gathered here. We got a bunch of snow, dude. Like, a lot of it melted and shit, but we got, like, a bunch of snow for I know somebody's going to be like, I lived in Michigan for 42 years. We don't even count snow until it's 8 feet deep or whatever. We got a bunch of snow for this area. School's canceled. I'm not sure if tomorrow's school's canceled or not. So they did remote learning, of course. I'm going to look up tomorrow. 7 new posts. Yes, tomorrow, virtual learning as well. We're out of snow days, so the kids have to do it online. So they're all bringing home their Chromebooks, which is better. I mean, honestly, I think they should have. So the reason we're out of days is because of the flood, obviously. But I think they ought to do this all the time, right? Let's say we have, I think we have like 20-some snow days a year. All of those snow days, they ought to at least do like 2 hours of remote learning, right? And if you can't be there, like you're on vacation or snowed in or something, I think they ought to do it all the time. It keeps the kids engaged. It's not that hard. It's not hard at all for me because Mariah does it all. But it's not that hard for the kids. They can keep up. They can do their thing. I think they always are to do remote learning when they're out for snow. And then we just take the 20 snow days or what off after the end of the year. They get to leave 20 days earlier or something. I don't know. Anyways, that's happening. I saw Kash Patel. Kash Patel's now in there, which is crazy to think. This guy who's went on like every podcast in the world, talked about his personal vendetta, talked about how the election was stolen, talked about how he had insider information, talked about devolution and Trump was still president, talked about all this fucking crazy shit, right? And somehow he's in charge of the FBI. People like this are absolute fucking nut jobs, losing their fucking jobs. They're like, I'm glad Doge is here. Look at this.
What happened today? So, I mean, I went in at my normal time. When I arrived there, everybody was in a very downtrodden mood. And when I went to my
guy that works for the IRS, never had a bad report, just fired.
Computer,
in the middle of tax season, by the way.
Everybody was having some technical issues. Like none of our computers were really loading up either the programs that we needed to operate or like Teams.
That's what we always did too. It's only since COVID. Now that because COVID happened, all the kids have the ability to connect. We have all these systems in place for remote learning. So now, since COVID happened, if you run out of snow days, boom, you're good to go.
My story is the Teams. That's kind of how I figured out that we were getting fired today. Was when I went in, I logged into Teams, and I sent you the photo of what I saw when I went to log in. And that's when I left my cubicle and I went around to everybody else I work with. I'm like, hey, what's your Teams look like? Some were having trouble, some were able to log in. It was very, very chaotic. There was no organization to it at all. And basically, we just sat around for the rest of the day. Talk about government efficiency. We literally sat there and did nothing all day long while we waited for our fate. So again, we got our email saying that we were fired after sitting around all day knowing we were fired. And then we turned in our equipment about an hour or so later, and then we were escorted out of the building.
What do you make of what happened to you and your colleagues today? We hear about 400 employees, including yourself, were laid off.
It's unfair.
Yeah, I just wish one of them would have a spine. Like, this is not a partisan issue. It's not like the Democrats just don't want him because he's going to do Democrat or he's going to do Republican things. Not a single person has went up there has been fucking qualified in any way, shape, or form. They're just fucking spineless.
I was unemployed, so I was laid off. I was laid off before this job, and it took me 8 months to apply and go through all the background checks and everything I had to do to get this job. And then 4 months later, now I'm in the same boat I was in before. I don't know how to feel. I'm kind of numb right now.
He said he supports getting rid of this waste and fraud, but it isn't waste or fraud, right? Because you lost your fucking job. Would you classify your job as waste or fraud? He supports that, and that's why he joined the government, was to, get rid of this waste and fraud. They're giving Elon Musk a chainsaw to take it to the bureaucracy at CPAC, like crazy shit.
I went out to lunch with one of my buddies after immediately it happened, and what can you do at this point? Aside from reach out to the news organizations, reach out to our senators, reach out to our representatives. It wasn't a legal firing. My performance was good. I was doing everything I was supposed to be doing. I was even one of those government employees that went every day of the week. I had to report every Monday through Friday, 7 to 3:30. That was my tour duty, and that's what I served. And here I am.
Did they give you any inkling as to is there a package that you're aware about that exists right now? Or?
Well, no, not for us. I did not take that deferred resignation, which now looking back on it, it's kind of a regret. But who knows if that's even going to be honored in the end anyway, too. So I just feel pretty lost. I don't know where I'm going to go forward from here. I know the job market's not great right now, and what occurred today across the country,
and it's only going to get worse. Energy bills are going to fucking skyrocket. And these motherfuckers are still standing proud on it. Like, I saw someone today that made a video on TikTok. It's like, are you happy being lied to? Like, it's they're not going to pass tax on tips, tax on overtime, tax on Social Security. They're not going to bring the prices down. Energy prices are going to show. Are you happy? And dude's like, a comment left said, you just don't get it. This is what we voted for. This is what we want.
It is not going to help the job market.
What do you make of the Trump administration's actions?
It's scary now. Before I would have said getting voted out. Now, you know, Trump has a whole weaponized system behind him, right? You can't convince me if he told Kash Patel, like, ruin this guy's fucking career, claim that he did this, that, or the other, tie him up in an investigation for 10 years. He's dropping investigations to help with immigration from the mayor. You know what I'm saying? Like, I think it's scary now. So yeah, they could be, they could platform a candidate to run against you, and you could lose your position in MAGA or whatever. But Trump could also destroy you, and no one's standing up to him. No one's that chance. I want to share a quote with you, if I can find it. Remember how we talked about Curtis Yarvin? Hold on just a second. Let me see if I can find it. Okay. So Curtis Yarvin is the guy that all these crazy the oligarchy, the tech guys believe in. And we talked about, like, he wants basically like these like, democracy's over. It's not going to work. Let's drive it into the ground, and let's make these tech-based like city states where CEOs rule everything. If you don't like it, you don't get a vote. If you don't like it, fucking move to a different tech city state. And these would be conglomerates of, like, let's say like Tennessee, Alabama, and South Carolina went together, and they're ran by the CEO of Facebook, right? You don't get a vote. Instead, you just live where you like the laws at, whatever that is. These weird crypto places where they condone, like, surveillance, right? So Curtis Yarvin says, like, even inside your home would be constantly surveilled and monitored by AI to see how content or discontent you were with the government, and to tell you, like, what to do and what not to do and how they should rule and not rule. And it's a wild, like, dystopian future that Curtis Yarvin is in favor of, that he pitches. It's based on some earlier works by other ones, but this is the Dark Enlightenment, is his type of movement. And when we see this, Curtis Yarvin, so all these guys support him. All these guys back him. All these guys share his work. All these guys believe like him. Not so much Trump. Trump's like a patsy in this plan. But all the tech people around him, and the reason J.D. Vance got picked as the vice president, they might even have a plan to take Trump out if he doesn't conform. You know what I mean? Like, it's wild. It's at that level now. All these multi-billionaires believe the Curtis Yarvin shit. And Curtis Yarvin's crazy. But the reason I want to point out this one quote is, you know how recently Trump says, he who saves his country violates no law. J.D. Vance suggests that a court can't stop the president, that the president doesn't have to listen to the court. Elon Musk says all these people should be taken off the bench. They should be impeached. They can't stop the president. What if we don't listen to them? This is a direct quote from Curtis Yarvin, okay? So you can't tell me that they're not listening to Curtis Yarvin, because this is his exact quote from a couple years ago, all right, in 2021. Curtis Yarvin says, if I was Trump, this is what I would do, right? Fire every single middle-level bureaucrat, every civil servant in the administrative state, and replace them with loyal people. Then, oh, hold on. Let me find it again. I lost my paragraph. Then, when the courts stop you, stand before the country like Andrew Jackson did. And Vance has repeated this, by the way. And say, the Chief Justice has made his ruling. Now let him enforce it. So basically what they're saying is do whatever the fuck you want. When the courts, we know the courts are going to rule against us. When the courts rule against us, you come out and say, okay, the court ruled against us. Now let us see them enforce it, right? Because you have the FBI, you have the Justice Department, you have the military at your beck and call. How is the judge going to enforce it? Let's say, just for wild shits and giggles, let's say that the court says, no, you can't deport American citizens, and Trump wants to. No, you can't do it. And Trump says, I'm doing it anyways. How does the court have any power to stop him? He's got the Justice Department. He's got the DOD. He's got the military. He's got, who stops him? Other than literal people in the streets with rifles trying to fucking 1776 the place. There is a quote. One of my favorite movies is, I'm going to butcher this quote because I've seen it recently, but I don't remember the quote word for word. But it's the Gladiator, right? It's Gladiator. And when the Caesar, at the very first of the movie, when he's about to die, and it's repeated a couple times through the movie, when he's about to die, he talks about that Rome used to have a dream. And it was a dream so fragile that even just whispering of it could bring the whole thing toppling down. And it's democracy, right? Because democracy is amazing as long as everybody's playing within the rules of democracy, right? You have the freedom to travel, the freedom to speak, the freedom to protest, the freedom to whatever you want. And let's say you're in a room where they say, hey, you can express all of your freedoms because you're in this room. This room is for whatever you want to do until the only guy with a gun shows up, right? And says, speak and I'll kill you, right? Or protest, I'll kill you. Move, I'll kill you. So you still technically hold those freedoms, but if he's the only one with some type of action, some type of way to take action against you, and he isn't playing by the rules that believes that you have these freedoms, then it's just kind of over. This is when, let's see, this is about J.D. Vance. In September 2021, J.D. Vance offered 2 predictions about former President Donald J. Trump and 1 piece of advice. Mr. Trump would run again in 2024. Mr. Vance said he would win. And when he did, Mr. Vance counseled he needed the right people around him this time. Now, this is J.D. Vance's quote, which is eerily similar. Fire every single middle-level bureaucrat, every civil servant in the administrative state. Replace them with our people, Mr. Vance said on a podcast. He continued, then when the courts stop you, stand before the country like Andrew Jackson did, Mr. Vance said, citing a possible apocryphal quotation attributed to America's 7th president and say, the Chief Justice has made his ruling, now let him force it. That's the same quote that Jackson did when he was ruled against. Wasn't it about like the Indians and reservations or whatever? He was ruled against and said, the Chief Justice made his ruling, now have him enforce it. And he did what he wanted to anyways. In his U-turning path from anti-Trump author to MAGA-approved Ohio senator and running mate, Mr. Vance has developed a reputation for being ideologically pliable, open-minded, supporters say, coreless, critics counter. But he has been unswerving in recent years in his assessment of how Republicans should carry themselves when they win. Use every available lever of the state, even if it means testing bounds of the constitutional system. We are in the late Republican period, Mr. Vance said. That's also late Democratic, late Republican. That's also the Dark Enlightenment shit, right? stressing the need to counter what he described as political ruthlessness to the left. Tell me when the left has went outside the bounds of everything. And then like the court, so someone's like, well, the other day in chat, someone was like, well, Joe Biden forgave student debt and the court said he couldn't do that. First of all, we're talking about student debt versus destroying people's lives, right? You're not going to destroy the bank by getting rid of government-backed loans by forgiving debt. Second of all, when the court said, hey, you can't do this, he said, okay, my bad. If you roll on it, my bad. These are not synonymous, right? They're not the same thing. It's not happening. If we're going to push back against it, we have to get pretty wild, pretty far out there, and go in directions that a lot of conservatives right now are uncomfortable with. This is all J.D. Vance. For years, Mr. Vance has appeared entirely comfortable in far out there corners of his party, embracing thinkers and proposals on the so-called new right. He has drawn from influencers as varied as monarchist blogger, post-liberal conservative Catholics, and Prime Minister Viktor Orban of Hungary. According to a review of dozens of speeches, interviews, and writings since Mr. Vance formally entered politics and interviews with people close to him. Through his bumpy early weeks at Mr. Trump's junior partner, Mr. Vance has strained to combat a Democratic attack line that he is not just wrong-headed, but weird and retrograde, prone to mediations on childless sociopaths and cat ladies, and the ills of sexual revolution. On a certain level, though, many of Mr. Vance's intellectual allies agree with his opponents on a core premise. He has ascended while advancing some ideas that fall well outside the traditional political mainstream, insisting that these zero-sum times require a zero-sum strategy. He has urged Republicans to seize the endowments of the left-leaning universities, punishing nominal ideological foes through dramatic changes to tax code, and warmly quotes Richard Nixon's observations about higher education: the professors are the enemy. He has suggested that parents should receive extra votes in elections, one for each child in their care, to dilute the electoral power of the left. His team now insists this was more of a thought exercise than a serious proposal. If our enemies are using guns and bazookas, Mr. Vance has warned, we damn well better fight back with more than wet noodles. And that's the way he believes about it. They believe that democracy has failed. All democracies fail. The Dark Enlightenment is like all democracies fell eventually, right? And that instead of waiting for it to fall while we suffer and lose our money and lose our businesses and lose our social media or whatever we're invested in, we should hasten the fall, right? Drive it into the ground. And then when it's unworkable, we'll have the solution, which is these technocratic city-states bullshit, right? And that's what they're pushing for. Like they don't just play with this idea the way a philosopher wonders what it might be like to live on Venus. These are working ideas that they think they want to be ahead of, right, before it happens, and they want to be in control of.
I thought that he was. I did support him. I was a Trump supporter. You know, when he talks about government waste and all that, yes, I'm behind it. I believe there is a lot of stuff in the government that needs fixing. And that's part of the reason why I actually wanted to work for the government, actually, to help change the things that are wrong in the world, you know? I thought that someone with like his business acumen would have come in with a fine-tooth comb and actually found it instead of coming in with a wrecking ball.
They said they were coming in with a wrecking ball, dude. No one would mind if they come in with a fine-tooth comb and they said, okay, well, this $3 million went to a company that actually went out of business and we've still been paying them, 2 years in a row, right? So that's $6 million. Everybody knows that the government probably has places where money falls through cracks, right? Waste. I wouldn't call it fraud, right? Because fraud's like intentional, but waste, right? We're still paying this contract even though it ended last year. Accidentally, one payment went through for the month of whatever. No one's going to be upset about that.
And destroying people's lives for no reason.
Were you given a reason for the termination?
That my performance no longer fits the mission of the IRS.
Can you say whether or not your manager, your whoever, your superiors, they're was it very just about face, or did it seem like they're this?
Oh no, our management was scrambling to help us today. Management and union. I can't talk good about them because of where I'm at, but I mean, they did everything they could to help us today. And even some of the higher up management were sympathetic, and they understood where we were coming from. And I don't think they wanted us to go either. This was an executive action outside of his scope of power.
Have you?
He went through an 8-month hiring process. Never had anything but exceptional on his performance reviews. Fired without any discretion.
Able to think about what you're going to do next in terms of dealing with this situation?
All right, check this out. Curtis Yarvin is terrifying, and I think that J.D. Vance holds all of these beliefs. For a long time, Curtis Yarvin, 51-year-old computer engineer, has written online about political theory and relative obscurity. His ideas were pretty extreme, that institutions at the heart of the American intellectual life, like the mainstream media and academia, have been overrun by progressive groupthink and need to be dissolved. He believes that government bureaucracy should be radically gutted, and perhaps most provocative, he argues that American democracy should be replaced by what he calls a monarchy. So you see, when people are like, oh, this is what he calls a monarchy, and then Trump is saying, long live the king. Oh, he's just trolling the libs. I agree with you, Simon. It's pretty crazy that we've slipped as far as we have. And him going like them enforcing endorsing the far right party in Germany, refusing to meet with the leaders of countries, saying they won't be there long, blaming Ukraine, like just outright lying and blaming Ukraine for being invaded. Anyways, replaced by what he calls a monarchy run by what he called a CEO. Basically, his friendlier term for a dictator. To support his arguments, Yarvin relies on what those sympathetic to his views might see as a helpful serving of historical references, and what others see as a highly distorting mix of gross over the simplification, cherry picking, and personal interpretation presented as facts. But while Yarvin himself may still be obscure, his ideas are not. Vice President-elect J.D. Vance has alluded to Yarvin's notions of forcibly ridding American institutions of so-called wokeism. The incoming State Department official, Michael Anton, has spoken with Yarvin about how an American Caesar might be installed into power. And Yarvin also has fans in the powerful and increasingly political ranks of Silicon Valley. Mark Andreessen, the venture capitalist turned informal advisor to President-elect Donald Trump, has approvingly cited Yarvin's anti-democratic thinking. And Peter Thiel, a conservative mega donor who invested in a tech startup of Yarvin's, has called him a powerful historian. Perhaps unsurprising given all of this, Yarvin has become a fixture of right-wing media universe. He has been a guest on the shows of Tucker Carlson and Charlie Kirk, among others. I've been aware of Yarvin, who mostly makes his living on Substack, for years, and was mostly interested in his work as a prime example of growing anti-democratic sentiment, in particular, corners of the internet. Until recently, those ideas felt fringe, but given that they are now finding an audience and with some of the most powerful people in the country, Yarvin can't be so easily dismissed. Here's the interview. One of your central arguments is that America needs to, as you've put it in the past, get over our dictator phobia, that American democracy is a sham, beyond fixing, and having a monarch-style leader is the way to go. So why is democracy so bad, and why would having a dictator solve the problem? Curtis Yarvin says, let me answer that in a way that would be relatively accessible to the readers of the New York Times. You've probably heard of a man named Franklin Delano Roosevelt. Yes? I do a speech sometimes where I just read the last 10 paragraphs of FDR's first inaugural address, in which he essentially says, hey, Congress, give me absolute power or I'll take it anyway. So did FDR actually take it to that level of power? Yeah, he did. That's a great piece that I've sent to some of the people that I know that are involved in the transition. Who? Oh, there's all sorts of people milling around over there. Name one. Well, I sent the piece to Mark Andreessen. It's an excerpt from the diary of Harold Ickes, who is FDR's Secretary of the Interior, describing a cabinet meeting in 1933 what happens in this cabinet meeting is that Francis Perkins, who's the Secretary of Labor, is like, here, I have a list of projects that we're going to do. FDR personally takes this list, looks at the projects in New York, and is like, this is crap. Then at the end of the thing, everybody agrees that the bill would be fixed and then passed through Congress. This is FDR's acting like a CEO. So was FDR a dictator? I don't know. What I know is that Americans of all stripes basically revere FDR, and FDR ran the New Deal like a startup. The point you're trying to make is that we've had something like a dictator in the past, and therefore it's not something to be afraid of now. Is that right? Answer. Yeah. To look at the objective reality of power in the U.S. since the Revolution, you'll talk to people about the Articles of Confederation, and you're just like, name one thing that happened in America under the Articles of Confederation. And they can't unless they are a professional historian. Next, you have the first constitutional period under George Washington. If you look at the constitutional period under George Washington, and you look at the administration of Washington, what is established looks a lot like a startup. It looks so much like a startup that this guy, Alexander Hamilton, who is recognizably a startup bro, is running the whole government. He is basically like Larry Page of this republic. A question. Curtis, I feel like I'm asking you, what did you have for breakfast? And you're saying, well, you know, at the dawn of man, when cereals were first cultivated. Answer. I'm doing a Putin. I'll speed this up. Then to answer the question, what's so obviously bad about a democracy? Answer. To make a long story short, whether you want to call Washington, Lincoln, and FDR dictators, this word, they were basically national CEOs, and they were running the government like a company from the top down. Question. So why is democracy so bad? Answer. It's not even that democracy is bad. It's just that it's very weak. And the fact that it's very weak is easily seen by the fact that very unpopular policies like mass immigration persist despite strong majorities being against them. So the question is this democracy good or bad? Is, I think, a secondary question to, is it what we actually have? When you say to a New York Times reader, democracy is bad, they're a little bit shocked. But when you say to them, politics is bad or even populism is bad, they're like, oh, of course. These are horrible things. So when you want to say democracy is not a good system of government, just bridge that immediately to saying populism is not a good system of government. And then you'll be like, yes, of course. Actually, policy and laws should be set by wise experts and people in the courts and lawyers and professors. Then you'll realize that what you're actually endorsing is aristocracy rather than democracy. Question. It's probably overstated the extent to which you and J.D. Vance are friends. Answer. It's definitely overstated. Question. But he has mentioned you by name publicly and referred to de-wokification ideas that are similar to yours. You've been on Michael Anton's podcast talking with him about how to install an American Caesar. Peter Thiel has said you're an interesting thinker. So let's say people in positions of power said to you, we're going to do the Curtis Yarvin thing. What are the steps that they would take to change American democracy into something like a monarchy? Answer. My honest answer would have to be, it's not exactly time for that yet. No one should be reading this panicking, thinking I'm about to be installed as America's secret dictator. I don't think I'm even going to the inauguration. Were you invited? No, I'm an outsider, man. I'm an intellectual. The actual ways my ideas get into circulation is mostly through staffers who swim in this very online soup. What's happening now in D.C. is there's definitely an attempt to revive the White House that is an executive organization which governs the executive branch. And the difficulty with that is you say to anyone who's professionally involved in the business of Washington that Washington would work just fine or even better if there was no White House. They'll basically be like, yeah, of course. The executive branch works for Congress. So you have these poor voters out there who elected, as they think, a revolution. They elected Donald Trump, and maybe the world's most capable CEO is in there. Your point is that the way the system is set up, he actually can't get that much done. He can't actually get that much done. He can block things. He can disrupt it. He can create chaos and turbulence, but he can't really change what it is. Now, he's trying to downplay this for this interview with the New York Times, but obviously he's quoted this as saying this dude could fucking take it into the dirt. Certainly many things about COVID were different because Donald Trump was president. I'll tell you a funny story. At the risk of bringing my children into the media, in 2016, my children were going to a Chi-Chi progressive Mandarin Immersive School in San Francisco. Of course, Mandarin Immersive. You can't isolate children from the world, right? At the time, my late wife and I adopted the simple expedient of not talking about politics in front of the children. But of course, everyone's talking about it at school. And my son comes home and he has this very concrete question. He's like, Pop, when Donald Trump builds a wall around the country, how are we going to be able to go to the beach? I'm like, wow, you really took him literally? Everybody else is taking him literally, but you really took him literally. I'm like, if you see anything in the real world around you over the next 4 years that changes as a result of this election, I'll be surprised. So again, the system doesn't work. We've got to drive it into the ground. The guy's fucking wild. He looks wild. Hold on. Here's his headshot. He's a crazy motherfucker. I don't want to keep reading this whole article. Let's just go to... It's Ian, right? Curtis Yarvin. The end of the American... Oh, this is maybe this exact interview. Who's Wisecrack? Let's check this out.
Okay, as someone who's wasted almost 20 years of my life reading lots of philosophy, you would think that I would be excited if a fellow philosophy bro might end up in the White House. But I'm not, because the bro in question is J.D. Vance, and the philosophy in question is truly some of the most fascist and poorly written stuff I've ever seen. Now, there's been a lot of talk recently about the radical philosophers and theologians influencing right-wing politicians, including vice presidential candidate J.D. Vance. And these thinkers are pretty extreme. And while similar in their end goals, they can be separated into two camps. You have the neo-reactionary philosophers of Silicon Valley, and then the theo bros of the new Christian nationalism. Now, one of Vance's favorite philosophers, Curtis Yarvin, aka Mencius Moldbug, has won over Silicon Valley with his argument for a form of corporate monarchism, in which the government is abolished and reborn as a corporation run by a CEO king.
Another word for monarch in the 20th century context is obviously a despot or a dictator.
Or a CEO.
And if you know one thing about this channel, it's that we love CEOs. If they're watching our videos, if they're not, we hate them. Yarvin also once wrote about using the poor for biofuel, which he said was a joke, but then went on to say that the poor should be hooked up to VR headsets where they just do a matrix so they don't bother us. And then he critiqued Norwegian far-right terrorist Anders Breivik's act of mass murder, not for the senseless violence, but because it wasn't an effective strategy for taking down Norway's communist government. Meanwhile, the right-wing theologians are arguing for a political future where the church subsumes the state, men get to vote on behalf of their wives, and
The church subsumes the state. Men get to vote on behalf of their wives.
heretics can be punished by death.
Burn the heretic! Kill the mutant! Purge the unclean!
It all sounds pretty nuts, but these are not fringe figures. Both schools of thought directly influence powerful business and political leaders in America, ranging from Vance to billionaire Peter Thiel, meaning that come January 2025, a dude who believes this stuff could be one clogged artery away from becoming the most powerful person in the world. Oh boy. Now, because this prospect is so...
I don't think that Trump even knows it. He might not even know this shit exists, but I think J.D. Vance believes it. And I think J.D. Vance and Elon Musk believes it, and they hold the ear of Donald Trump.
Terrifying. I wanted to figure out what these people actually believe, and then given the opportunity, how they change our society. Friends and lovers, what I learned channel directly, it's also some real smart guys. So let's start with the group that's been affectionately called the Theo Bros. One of the hottest trends amongst millennial white men is a form of Christian theology arguing that the church should have political power. I'm more into the type of millennial white men that I'm friends with who just all got real.
Only the Christian church, and only the Christian church, you know, there's all these different groups, right? Only the Christian church that they believe in, right, should have this power. I fucking hate, it should be the biggest turnoff when someone running for political office says that they were told by God, they're going to vote the way God wants them to vote, they're going to stay to their beliefs. That should all be separate. Have whatever God you want. But when you go to represent somebody, you go to represent your constituents. It has nothing to do with their religion or what God told you last night or whatever, right? That's fucking wild.
Really into the Grateful Dead in our 30s, much more productive than getting really into Christian nationalism. Now, some of these Theo Bros promote a type of post-liberal Catholicism.
I don't want to violently overthrow the government. I want something far more revolutionary than that. I want to overthrow the party of progress.
While others advocate for straight-up Christian nationalism.
But yeah, it's the as a whole, the nation as a whole will identify itself as a Christian nation.
You know, for them, America has always been a Christian nation, founded by Christians for Christians, even if the Christians who founded it owned slaves, which some people are just cool with. Now, one thing that both groups hold in common are beliefs like women shouldn't be allowed to preach or vote.
So the Christian nationalists and the tech bros are like together, right? In J.D. Vance, they both feel represented.
Flogging should replace prison, and that, quote, the Constitution is dead, and that we should be...
Flogging should replace prison.
...governed by the 10 Commandments. This is all explained by journalist Kira Butler. Butler also points out that many of the Theo Bros believe in post-millennialism, the idea that believers can hasten Jesus' return by fighting against the satanic forces of liberal excess. She writes...
they can hasten Jesus' return by fighting against the satanic forces of liberals.
CEO bro Aaron Wrenn, an Accenture consultant turned Christian pundit, has described our current era as a negative world where Christians are persecuted for their beliefs. Andrew Isker, another bro.
Let's say that here's the problem with being a politician. Right now, when they go, let's say they go to vote on something contentious like abortion. They vote what they fucking personally believe about the Bible and abortion. When in reality, let's say the district you represent all want, like fucking, at least first term, maybe second trimester, right? Abortion and exceptions for health of the mother, baby. Let's say 99% of your constituents want that. They still vote as if God told them to vote on it. That's crazy, dude. That's crazy. And these people keep getting elected because people say, oh my God, they said Jesus in their campaign. They must be awful brave with the war we have on Christians right now. I'm a Christian too.
Calls it Trash World. Okay, if you were going to start a band called Trash World, what would your genre be and what would the name of your first album be? Let me know in the comments. Now, something that stood out to me when reading about these folks is the theme of persecution, because many of these guys, who to be clear, are white, upper and middle class men living in America, are convinced that they are being actively persecuted for their beliefs.
As a nation, we have a Christian heritage. How dare you or anybody else?
And they've tried to convince, they believe, or at least they put on this front as if the white Christian straight male is being persecuted. But they've even convinced the poor people of this too. Like people around me that live in my town. I'm like, how the fuck are you being persecuted for being white Christian male, but you're not being held back by being fucking dirt poor? Like there is a chance that your light bill might be too high this month and you'll be evicted from your home. But you think people are coming after you for being a white Christian straight male?
Tell me, I don't have the right to express it in this generation.
And this isn't a new idea. We've seen this in our videos looking at the God's Not Dead film series. American evangelicals have long claimed that they are being oppressed.
Look, I understand your position. You feel that you're...
It's the war on Christians, guys. Where? I might join the other army.
Last-ditch stand for your faith. And you've chosen this as a hill that you're willing to die on. Our whole faith started because one man chose a hill he was willing to die on.
Also, let me know if you want me to cover God's Not Dead 5. I'm going to do it anyways, but let me know. Now, Butler quotes the movement's godfather, Pastor Doug Wilson, as saying that it used to be that the sexually troubled had to keep their kinks hidden away in the closet. Now, it is the conservative Christian who needs to keep his virtues hidden in the recesses of the closet. I mean, I'll just say this. In the Bible, some of the virtues are like helping the poor, caring for vulnerable people, turning the other cheek. I don't think you have to hide that stuff. Let those virtues out of the closet, big boy. Now, even though the Bible says that you should love your enemies and pray for those who persecute you, Wilson and his followers seem way more interested in defeating.
They pick out, turn the other cheek, hell no. They pick out the parts of the Bible they want. They want the Old Testament God of fire and brimstone.
Their persecutors and taking back cultural and political power. For Wilson, who is also a YouTuber.
Anybody that has anything, anybody that enjoys any type of sex other than missionary strictly for procreation, where nobody fucking enjoys it.
And this means fighting against liberal culture and pushing others to say the quiet part out loud.
Now, this is true. He's pointing in the right direction.
Mariah's liable to get put in a concentration camp just because of her affinity to anal.
He's stumbling in the right direction.
Who knows?
A bunch of true things here.
I can't protect her, guys.
But he doesn't have a foundation to put them on.
Now, a way he does this is by celebrating No Quarter November, which is kind of like Movember, but instead of growing mustaches to raise money for charity, Wilson spends November saying whatever the he wants, offering no quarter to political correctness. In last year's video, along with promising to help you apocalypse-proof your family, Wilson goes outside with a blowtorch to burn down the logos for Instagram, Twitter, TikTok, Netflix, as well as Ariel from The Little Mermaid.
Stick around. Time for pie.
I was very confused what Ariel had to do with those tech companies. He also put out a documentary on raising future men, which includes the most upsetting parenting advice I've ever heard.
If they are at the Parkland school and a shooter shows up, we want them running towards the sound of gunfire.
Like, why? Are they supposed to have guns also?
I guess they're just supposed to be heroes or something, I guess, but I don't think they have guns too. I don't even know.
What are you gonna do against guns?
I don't know! Sweetie, if I die in a freak accident and you're watching these videos to try to get to know me in the future, don't run towards that sound ever. Wilson's protege is a younger guy, also a YouTuber, named Joel Webbin. Guys. I found the mermaid thing.
If they've been teaching their kids to run to a gunfire, let's just drop them off outside of fucking shooting range.
It's here on Webbin's YouTube page. So they think mermaids are real and that they're evil, which I learned in their video.
The biblical case for real mermaids that are evil, that try to lure men through lust away from God.
The biblical case for the existence of mermaids.
We need to go back to if you're a mermaid, you're in hell.
Webin also has a video titled, "It's Okay to Be White," which, as you could guess, is about being persecuted not only because you're Christian, but also because you're white. So, double persecution.
But there is a hostility and a growing hostility on white people, white America. And the crux of the argument where people kind of find themselves on either side of the aisle disagreeing is this a war on white?
Dude, I've been trying to get all the other crazy people that I live near to send me their social security number because I'm pretty sure they're going to put us in camps by the last 4 digits. And I just want to know, I like to plan ahead, and I don't know who I'm going to be bunkmates with.
People, for lack of a better phrase, is it synonymous with just a war on Christianity?
It's also a white supremacist dog whistle, mainstream enough to have its own Wikipedia page, and something tells me he knows this.
Somebody says Adolf Hitler was the last Christian prince. Yeah, I agree. You don't have to do that. Right. But the right, I feel like we shoot our own.
Butler's piece notes that
you don't have to agree that Adolf Hitler was the last Christian prince, but we need to at least be like, hey, he was on the right and didn't do everything wrong.
Webin has recently complained about immigrants.
No, it's like full straight up Hindu garb at our neighborhood swimming pool that my daughter is asking, and I'm trying to explain. She's like, what, and I don't even know what country I'm in my own neighborhood.
And he's also had this to say about who you'll meet in heaven.
I think a lot of people are going to be surprised, when you get to heaven and, you're spending eternity worshiping Christ next to Stonewall Jackson and Robert E. Lee and Jonathan Edwards, and George Whitefield and Martin Luther King Jr. is in hell.
And his Twitter feed makes clear that he's...
What?
Vance as the embodiment of his theological project. Now, yet another leader in this movement, William Wolfe, told Butler that his ideal version of America would be led by a Caesar figure. Gay marriage would be strictly prohibited.
Again, the American Caesar. They don't want to say dictator, but that's what they're talking about, right? That's what they're talking about. They will say CEO. They will say FDR. They will say an American Caesar. They'll say anything but dictator.
Women would not be allowed to vote. Instead, men would vote for their households. So it seems like Caesar was at least bi. Google also gave me the option, who was the gayest Roman emperor? And there's an article about it. There you go. That's what you came here to learn. And at a recent conference, he called the concept of America as a melting pot an early 20th century idea cooked up by a Jew in New York who despised the confident Anglo-Protestant establishment. Because, hey, why have some white nationalist Christianity without some casual anti-Semitism?
Jesus Christ, this is wild.
For good measure.
I'm glad we watched this channel. I need to subscribe to it. This looks like a good channel. This is Wisecrack on YouTube.
Catholic variant of this trend, and it's one that Vance has cited as an influence. It's called integralism. Now, according to Kevin Valliere, a philosopher who recently wrote a book on the topic, integralists think church and state should be integrated for the entire common good of the people, not just in this life, but also the next. But the way that it works is that the church is the primary mode of social organization that's guiding people into the next life. Now, in practice, this is an anti-democratic...
If we get... So I believe over the next 4 years, there's going to be a shit ton of pulling the church in and trying to 10 Commandments up the laws and putting loyalists in and blah, blah, blah. If we get to another election and a Democrat is elected and they start undoing some of these policies, can you imagine how bad the right is going to scream and kick and shout and cry that it's a dictator, this is worse than Hitler, that's who... But when Trump does it, they're like, yeah, that's what we voted for. This is what we voted for.
Authoritarian vision for a Catholic state in which social and political policies are shaped by Catholicism, and a very specific conservative form of Catholicism, and not stuff like humanism, liberalism, or pluralism. According to scholar Timothy Troutner, integralism functions as a kind of Catholic veneer for authoritarians like Trump or Viktor Orban, but it could just as easily be invoked to support even more brazen brutality. Now, he quotes a book on integralism written by Father Thomas Crean and Alan Finister, writing that Jews, atheists, and all non-Catholics will be denied citizenship and voting rights under the Catholic state, and that permanent and even
Jews, atheists, and non-Catholics will be denied citizenship and voting rights.
Hereditary slavery can be a potentially valid legal relationship in certain circumstances. I know the first part was also nuts, but the last thing I said is that they said that slavery can be okay in certain circumstances. Who wants to live in a society where slavery is sort of a gray area? There's some circumstances where it's okay. Now, the plan to get there, as Valliere explains, is that while liberalism is collapsing of its own weight, you get the right, reflective, deeply committed Catholic people into those bureaucracies, into the judiciary, into the executive. It's like history.
Into the bureaucracy. right? Replace it with loyalists into the judiciary, into the executive branch.
Will hand you this opportunity. They have your small group. They're training their own people. They're ready to go. So yeah, the plan here is basically to fill all types of elected and appointed positions.
It's Project 2025 as well.
With conservative Catholics and Christians ready to wield power aggressively and take advantage of crises within liberalism. You know, whether that's rising inflation and economic uncertainty, worries about immigration and borders, political corruption, all the fun stuff. Google Supreme Court after this one, guys. While this is all clearly disturbing, I'll be honest with you, it's hard for me to imagine that there would ever be enough radical right-wing evangelicals and medieval fetishizing Catholics to really do any of this, you know, to really recreate America in this image. That said, in fairness, you know, it's not impossible that Trump and Vance win the upcoming election, and then the Vance runs again in 2028 as a sort of incumbent and then tries to make some of this a reality. Still not super likely. But then I got into the philosophy side of all this, and boy, oh boy, while at an intellectual level, it's truly some of the dumbest nonsense I've ever read, these ideas are already influencing people like Thiel and Vance, who publicly support them. And because you don't need to be a mermaid burner to join in, they have a potentially much wider appeal. Okay, guys, I'm gonna say this right off the rip. The most influential philosopher of the Silicon Valley, the new right wing, used to go by the name Mencius Moldbug. Lots of people took the writings of an anonymous
That's
blogger
Curtis
named Moldbug
Yarvin.
seriously, including
So Mencius Moldbug is like what he publishes under.
leaders in Silicon Valley and Washington. Now, the man behind the mold is the aforementioned Curtis Yarvin, a software engineer turned self-styled dark intellectual figure. If you want a full biography of this guy, you can check out the Behind the Bastards recent 2-part series on it, which was a fun and terrifying listen. And Ed Helms was on it. So if you've ever thought, hey, I want to hear Andy from The Office learn about a fascist philosopher from Silicon Valley, this is your chance.
Dwight's grandfather was a member.
Can you imagine looking back on all the crazy shit it did in 2016 and saying, hey, that was when the guardrails were still on. That was when, you know, people could stand up, or this idea didn't pass, or Congress wasn't afraid to tell him no, or the court didn't rule that he has absolute immunity, and you know, he had people that didn't agree with him on everything. And now we're like, what the fuck's going to happen now?
Member of the Bund, which is not technically the same thing as the Nazi Party. So,
I was going to say it was a tax evader.
Now, Yarvin has been called
was a member of,
and Ed Helms was on it. So if you've ever thought, hey, I want to hear Andy from The Office learn about a fascist philosopher from Silicon Valley, this is your chance.
Dwight's grandfather
was a member of the Bund, which is not technically the same thing as the Nazi Party. So,
I was going to say it was a tax evader.
Now, Yarvin has been called the house philosopher for billionaire Silicon Valley guy Peter Thiel and his extended Thielverse, which includes Vance, among others. He's argued that one of the problems with democracy, which he hates, is that the masses suck. It's like a Limp Bizkit lyric. He thinks government should be turned into smaller entities controlled with absolute rule by tech corporations and their CEOs, who act as dictators, ruling over these new despotisms, monarchies, and feudalisms. Now, there won't be any voting or democratic processes here, though the dictator CEOs might be appointed by property-owning shareholders. We got into this.
So you may be able to appoint your CEO if you own property and a share in the tech state.
Sort of thing in a recent video about weird billionaire Bitcoin guys building countries. Now, in case this doesn't have you ready to turn in your democracy card and move into one of Yarvin's imagined patchwork cities, he also espouses pseudoscientific racism, in which, quote, white people are congenitally smarter than black and brown people, and that Chinese people may be the smartest of all. Sounds cool, right? Now, trying to summarize the core of his project is difficult, as it's scattered over a series of disjointed, even incoherent blog posts and interviews. And I will say, as someone who's read and graded like thousands of philosophy essays in my day, it's bad writing. It's writing that wouldn't even, you know, cut the mustard in an undergraduate course. You know, it's not mysterious. It's not, you gotta really figure out what he means. It's just poorly written. But the overall gist here seems to be that Yarvin rejects the foundational premises of the Enlightenment. You know, among other things, that's like a humanist ethic, the universality.
Dark Enlightenment.
You know, democracy is a political project, the aim of a egalitarian society. He also disdains modern systems that he believes perpetuate these ideals. Now, for him, this is journalism plus academia, which he calls the cathedral, and he thinks these are the intellectual institutions at the center of modern society. Now, this worldview is informed by 19th century Scottish writer Thomas Carlyle, a reactionary who hated the democratic masses and wrote that man, little as he may suppose it, is necessitated to obey a superior. Whereas other philosophers of Carlyle's era called for humans to be free from monarchy and oppression, Carlyle thought folks needed to just suck it up and accept their subordination. And Yarvin has said, I will always be a Carlylean. These ideas congeal into neo-reactionary thought, which combines anti-Enlightenment preferences for monarchy over democracy.
To answer your question very directly,
Look at this guy. Motherfucker out here looking like Lord Farquaad and trying to take over the United States.
I'm a monarchist.
With what Jacob Siegel calls a post-libertarian ethos that embraced technological capitalism as the proper means of administering society. Now, in this school of thought, we don't have some grand arc of history that's progressing towards justice. And, you know, pursuing liberty and equality as political goals is just a sign that you're stupid.
If we let elected politicians run the state, we get demagoguery, we get Hitler. It's all true. That's what happened. That's what we got.
Now, according to Yu Hui, for the neo-reactionaries, the equality, democracy, and liberty proposed by the Enlightenment and their universalization led to an unproductive politics characterized by political correctness. One, therefore, needs to take the red pill to renounce these causes. And, you know, once you do, you'll be ready to seek out alternatives.
By starting to think this way, I felt myself, you know, sort of, as one might say, exiting the matrix.
This obsession with the idea that political correctness is an oppressive outcome of
out of the matrix, right? The red pill.
Enlightenment thought is all over Yarvin's work.
Democracy is basically considered one of the worst.
I think they're just out of touch with reality, right? They're all fucking billionaires. They don't understand what it's like. And they're like, why are people voting this way? Why are my taxes going to that?
Forms of government until the 18th century. It's a sort of becomes the reverse of a slur in America around that time. But it had traditionally been like, oh, this was tried and it doesn't work.
At times, it honestly seems like he's constructing a whole philosophy that just justifies the belief that white people are smarter and that the smartness makes them superior to others and that these others should have to listen to them. You know, in this way, the underlying psychology of this is analogous to the Theo Bros and integralists who think that women and non-Christians need to get in line and follow their lead. And like those theologians, Yarvin's work is grounded in an anxiety about the decline of the white West, marked by the rise of globalization, which has chipped away at its economic and cultural dominance.
One of the things that's really surprising and unpleasant about kind of China beating the West at its own game in sort of so many ways is the number of ways in which things in China just obviously work extremely badly. And so, like, yeah, you know, the place is still kind of a third world country in a way.
To me, this all has the vibes of an aging high school quarterback. You know, he's now sitting at the local bar, 4 beers in, talking about how he could easily get back in shape, throw the game-winning touchdown, and take Kelly McDonald to prom.
How much you want to make a bet I can throw a football over the mountains?
Kelly McDonald's been married to a computer programmer named Chip for 10 years now. They have a vacation home in Bermuda. She doesn't even remember your name. But this sort of anxiety, especially in as much as it's hostile to the Enlightenment Project, doesn't really make sense. Because the Enlightenment Project itself, with its champion of equality and the embrace of reason, was never really completed. Instead, it was derailed by the rise of industrial capitalism and then pushed off a cliff by modern neoliberal economics. As Hui writes, the neo-reactionary critique exposes the limit of the Enlightenment and its project. But surprisingly, it may only show that the Enlightenment has never really been implemented. So in other words, like, they think they're ruthlessly critiquing the political philosophy of the Enlightenment, when in fact those values aren't the thing that's shaping modern culture in the first place. Okay, let's delve into headier territory here and follow Hui's argument, in which it's tempting to argue that Yarvin and the neo...
If anything shapes it more than... if something shapes it more than anything, it is a contrast between... like versions of liberalism. You can't say that in front of a Trump supporter because they think that's the same as being like a fucking a socialist fucking utopia. But it's like concepts of trying to weigh liberalism and out of control fucking capitalism, right? Like we can't just buy and sell people or pay children a penny a day to work in the fucking mines. But capitalism is trying to do everything it can to scrape back every fucking penny they can.
Reactionaries are stuck in what philosopher George Wilhelm Friedrich Hegel called the unhappy consciousness. And this describes the moment that one looks back on history and sees a contradiction where they previously saw a straightforward and unified whole. I saw this in friends like myself who grew up religious.
And the motherfuckers in charge now have lost all empathy for anything, right? They don't give a fuck about your job. They don't give a fuck about veterans. They don't give a fuck about the poor, the starving, kids, hungry. It doesn't matter. They don't give a fuck.
Or like flirted with evangelicalism, but then went to college and started reading a lot, and then you see that elements of the narrative you grew up believing are just inherently contradictory. It can be very confusing. It can be very upsetting for some people, you know?
Whoever welcomes one of these little ones in my name might be letting in a murderer or a drug.
God, did I show this on here? Did I show this video? It was fucking hilarious. I remember watching it.
Let's get her to a detention center, you know, so we can figure.
It's like the right-wing Jesus or something.
What's going on?
Now, initially, this moment is tragic because the unhappy consciousness can't make sense of this contradiction. They can't see how what they thought was whole and complete is actually fractured and unfinished. Faced with this intellectual inconvenience, one can either get stuck in the feeling of unhappiness and realizing that these narratives are unfinished and contradictory, or they can move forward understanding that these contradictions are just a part of the development of consciousness and history. We actually got into some of these contradictions in our video on political speech from a few weeks back, where we talked about this language in which, you know, we want to do what's best for workers and bosses, but of course...
The rules, the way that... like the three branches of government and overseeing each other and the rules that we all live by, okay? Every rule. Like, hey, you shouldn't murder people. Are only valid and only serve their purposes if other people play by the rules, right? You and another person can be mad at each other, and you're playing by the rules of like, hey, I shouldn't assault them and murder them, and the other person's not playing by those rules, then you're dead, right? You can play by the rules of like fucking these three branches of government oversee each other and no one steps out of line as long as they're willing to play by those. If he just says, no, we're not going to do that, okay, we'll impeach you, doesn't matter. All right, we'll convict you. Doesn't matter. We'll remove you from office. Doesn't matter. Right? It's only as long as people are willing to play by the rules.
Of course, when we look into that, what's best for workers isn't what's best for bosses, and vice versa. You know, stuff like that. And I'll tell you a story about my two best friends. I won't say their names. You know, we all at different points we're religious in different ways.
And the reason that people play by the rules with like checks and balances in the Constitution and shit is because most people have a desire to see that preserved, to not have the tables turned on them, and for this concept to continue. Trump has given up on that. He doesn't believe in that anymore. He said literally like, well, we should suspend some stuff in the Constitution, especially when stuff's going on about me. Maybe it's time to rewrite the Constitution. We should change everything about it. Right? He's given up on that being a system that or maybe he never did, that he wants to promote into the future. So he's no longer playing by the rules. He'll share outright lies or fucking edited videos and photos and lies and fucking claim shit that he knows isn't true, like the election was stolen. Because he has no desire, zero desire for this system to continue on.
And like one of these guys has more of a vibe of, okay, so there was problems with the stuff I believed then. I now see that. But moving forward, I also see how those things I learned then are part of a larger narrative about the way I relate to myself in the world. And another one of those guys is like, no, that stuff was all bad. And if I wasn't so religious, I would have had more sex in my early 20s. So those are like two ways people deal with the unhappy consciousness. If those friends ever watch this, I love you both. I love you differently, but I love you both. The neo-reactionary mind is unable to accept the contradictions inherent in, the post-Enlightenment era. So they instead curse the whole thing as damned from the start and then long for a pre-Enlightenment past where strong men ruled and the weak followed. As Sweet writes, the will towards such radical change leaves them with the illusion of a beautiful story on the other side of the world, and with elaborate speculations about a superintelligence that will save human beings from politics. And while Yarvin's philosophical enemy is the Enlightenment and its legacy, his more immediate cultural enemy is the cathedral, which is that mixture of...
There's like some of these guys talking about like, well, we'll have made an AI god by then, right? So you don't have to worry about tough decisions, what should be done, who's right, who's wrong, convicting people in court. Like AI will just take in all of the information that's available to the entire world with no restrictions, and it'll know if you're guilty of murder. It'll know who should be president. It'll know if this law should be passed. It'll know if you have a right to health care. It'll know if you're like they like fantasize about this shit.
Academia and journalism.
The cathedral, to refer to these kind of the mainstream intellectual, basically newspapers and academia.
And he sees the academia media complex as holding the same influence as the church once held in medieval society.
This system does not work like the Vatican. It basically works as if it had a pope. And it's as unanimous as if it had a pope.
Now here, I really cannot help but see the irony in a self-constructed philosopher. And one who was able to do all his reading and writing initially because he got a 6-figure payout from a tech company, acting as if the modern university is an elite system.
Peter Thiel bought one of his companies.
Of influence on society and culture. I'm going to say more about this later in the video, but from personal experience, teaching philosophy at a contemporary university does not feel like a position of powerful cultural influence. At the rate that humanities programs are being shut down, it seems like financial interests might have a slight edge over this ideological one. As one of Yarvin's critics notes, nowhere on Yarvin's list of things that are controlling the world and setting up a political center is finance. Whereas in reality, finance turns out to do an awful lot. So he's either missing the point or maybe just afraid to upset the finance guys who fund his lifestyle.
So I noticed you don't mention big business in that context or the tech powers. Why is that not on your list?
Because the influence of those over the world outside them is much smaller than the influence of the world outside them over them.
No, just like the
bullshit. We can tell that's not true now. Like, social media has far-reaching influence in whoever controls it.
Theo bros, there's a sort of self-invented persecution complex here, with a well-educated, upper-class white guy claiming oppression because the rest of the world doesn't see how smart and special he is. It's like an unfunny version of Dwight Schrute, believing that if he were in charge, everything would be better. Unfortunately for us, this version of Dwight Schrute has the ear of some very powerful people, including Vance, Steele, and the folks that run some of the wealthiest tech companies and investment funds on the planet. And it makes sense why these folks, most of whom are also well-educated, white, and incredibly rich, would be attracted to Yarvin's thought, as it justifies why no one cool in the culture wants to hang out with him.
There was so much energy in this room. I felt maybe I was in Madison Square Garden getting ready to win another world title.
And it suggests how they can manipulate culture so they are in charge of things. And just to make sure that we're not drawing false connections here, Vance has spoken openly about his admiration for Yarvin. In one piece, when talking about him,
the fact that he can't open his eyes drives me insane. You would hate Atsuko. Just saying.
So one option is to basically accept that this entire thing is going to fall in on itself. So the task of conservatives right now is to preserve as much as can be preserved, waiting for the inevitable collapse of the current order. Because when the current...
That was so freaking racist. Oh, I'm sort of sorry, Atsuko. Not a lot, but a little bit.
Order falls, Yarvin's acolytes want to be ready to fill the empty space. While Yarvin is motivated by the cold rationality of a world without God, and the Theo bros think that God exists and that he hates mermaids and gay cartoons, they share a similar political project supported by a similar group of tech billionaires and vice presidential candidates. But what really fuels both groups is a sort of cultural resentment, grounded in the fact that we no longer live in a world where rich and well-educated white guys are considered more important or intelligent or attractive simply on the basis of being rich and well-educated white guys. Of course, whiteness is still privileged in everything from beauty standards to hiring practices. It's just not as cool as it once was. To put it in simpler...
Oh, by the way, Destiny's finally broke his silence about the lawsuit and addressed it. And it is wild, dude. So basically, he was sexting videos with him in it. With he met a girl, he was sleeping with her, right? They sent videos back and forth that include them and their other partners. She come to meet him. They made videos together. Years later, he's sexting with another girl and sending videos that he appears in, like his own sex videos, that have another person in them. And she claims she never consented to these being sent to a third party. That person gets hacked or leaked or something, and because it's Destiny, like an online guy, they put it everywhere, try to destroy him with it. They're tweeting it to his friends and family members and his 13-year-old son, shit like that, like crazy shit, trying to destroy him. Kiwi Farms is hosting it. No one's doing anything to take it down. Well, that girl comes to sue him, and her first demand letter was $15 million. And she kept doing this weird thing when they were negotiating before the lawsuit, where she's like, well, if I don't get the number I want from Destiny, I'm just going to kill myself. That's the nuclear option. Don't worry, I won't do it till after the holidays. Like, I don't know. It sounds like extortion to me, but whatever.
Terms, these guys are mad that they're not cool and that no one wants to them. Yarvin in particular talks repeatedly about how the cool kids are the enemy.
There's two kinds of good parties. One is the kind of party where there are hot girls, and the other is the kind of party where there are no hot girls, but there should be hot.
As political scientist Matt McManus writes,
there should be hot girls at our party.
What's made him appealing to so many on the right isn't the quality of his reason, but his undeniable ability to express reactionary resentment in a 21st century techno-hipster vocabulary. There's a reason that the alienated young men devouring his early blogs found him so compelling. He offered a provocative and philosophical account of why their lives sucked and everything.
This is what I think we're going to look back on as a tragedy. Like, if history is honest, I think we're going to look back at it on as a tragedy that not discriminated against. I wouldn't say it's like discrimination, but I will say that there's a crisis of young, angry, white boys, men, whatever you want to call them, that feel like they've been left behind, ignored, set aside, and demonized. And instead of bringing them into the fold and saying, yeah, like, you know, some of you guys can be douchebags and Kyles and fucking, you know, hopped up on energy drinks, beating the hell and fucking date raping people. It's not all of them, right? It's not all of them. And instead of bringing those people in, they left them alienated for the neo-Nazis and the Kurdish Yarvins and the fucking MAGA people and those people to pick up, right? There's obviously a mental health crisis with these people because you can see it in like suicide rates, right? Or just in school shooters, right? Like, and instead of trying to pick those people up, it's almost like the world said, well, they've had it good for too long anyways. They can suffer a little bit like the rest of us. And it seems like the world kind of left them behind. It's not going to be good. It isn't good now. It's not going to be good. And it'll show in data sets eventually.
Felt so bad. You know, we helped them feel like they weren't only victims, but that their anger was righteous. Now, Vance is like a sort of synthesis between
Right. So they gave them a place to feel like they're victims, which one could argue they are, but that their anger was righteous instead of just saying, hey, you know, it's not like that. Like, you got to call out your own, right? You can't be doing these behaviors, but there's still a place for you in society. It's like the other side said, there's no place for you, right? You've had it too good for too long, so fuck off while we do this other thing without you.
Marvin and the Theo Bros. You know, he argues that the regime has sold a story to these young people that social media and consumer technology is making our lives.
The left struggles with that. The left thinks they need the left-wing Joe Rogan, when in actuality they've alienated these people. I know because I lived through it, right? I was there.
Better even as wages stagnate and technology feeds an epidemic of depression. And of course, in a very real sense, much of this is true. You know, we absolutely have been sold a narrative in which tech will make our lives easier and social media will make us happier and more connected. But we're at least a couple decades into that narrative, and most of us are not feeling great. I also can't help but note that many of the same folks selling us on the saving power of technology and social media are also the ones funding people like Yarvin and Vance. But it seems that being trapped in a state of unhappy consciousness is keeping these folks from seeing that the underlying culprit of many of the problems
and it's not like we didn't have adequate time to address this and evidence. Like, somebody should have started paying more attention to this after fucking Columbine. You know what I mean? Like, they feel like everybody labels them as like a misogynist or a fucking bro or an idiot or scared of them because they're gonna fucking rape them or putting their white privilege on top of them, and like they feel like chastised and pushed out. And the left has done a really poor job of letting voices like all white people are just overtly racist, like those voices rise to the top and cheering them on. while automatically dismissing this. That's why Destiny does so good, right? He's a young white guy who's not afraid to say, like, you know, the things that the more mainstream the voices in the left are afraid to say.
Describe isn't the regime, the cathedral, or, women who vote. Rather, it's an economic system that perpetuates wealth inequality while maintaining the ideology that wealth acquisition and rising stock values are what make us happy and give our
damn, it's cold in here.
Rather than investigating these conditions, they continue to point to Enlightenment liberalism and democracy more generally as the root causes of their problems. Now, for Yarvin, this sort of liberalism is bad in so much as it prioritizes academia and the media as the ultimate arbiters of truth, trumpeting values like human equality that are for Yarvin neither natural nor good. For the Theobros, this system has deprioritized the sovereignty of God and placed base liberal desires over the account of truth offered in their interpretation of the Bible. Again, Vance seems to agree on both counts. So their solutions are ultimately that we need to go back to a world where guys like us could actually be happy, an era where the divine right of kings dominated the will of the people. Now, McManus argues that unlike this sort of reactionary resentment, left-wing resentment is usually directed at the upper classes, with their demands being a freedom from oppression.
I think they need to explain it the same way that you explain Black Lives Matter, right? When people say Black Lives Matter, they don't mean that white lives don't, or blue lives, whatever the fuck you want to call it. That's an occupation. They don't mean that. They're trying to say, hey, we need to bring this up to where it has the same value as everybody else. So when they're doing things like saying, hey, like this group needs to be recognized, and this group needs to be recognized, and this group needs to be put on an even playing field, it's almost like they took this one sect of people and was just like, fuck those people. Fuck those people. They don't deserve. And it's left a bunch of people with like basically identity crisis, and they don't feel like they fit in. And then they assimilate to the more radical, right? They find other people that feel like, hey, we just don't fit here. And when they find those people, they're usually in fucking neo-Nazi movements or somewhere over on fucking BitChute watching the craziest fucking videos you can imagine.
But that right-wing resentment combines a similar attitude of victimhood with megalomaniacal feelings of personal superiority. It takes the form of insisting that one is part of some natural elite that deserves status and power, but is
probably both, right? Did they refuse to assimilate a modern culture like treating women as property? Yeah, probably both. But there still needs to be a hand there, right? Children don't learn. Like they're a lot of times they're still children. But if you take the example, like children don't learn things by being like, oh, you're fucking too stupid to learn that stoves are hot, right? Or attacking them when they have a thought like, maybe I should touch the stove. There still should have been somebody to pick up that slack, and it's like they were the forgotten section because everybody wanted to be on the new train of like, we got to get these people and bring these people up and get these people recognized and make sure these people, and those people just kind of were left to figure it out on their own. When someone should have stepped in and said, hey, what the fuck are you doing, right? You can't treat women like this. Here's the way we do it. Come on, I'll show you. Instead, they're just like, you fucking treat women like this. Fuck you. You're gone. You're dead to me. And then they find other groups to fit in with.
Persecuted by the weak and inferior who dare to demand equal status with the strong. They think they're persecuted by the weak and inferior. Guys, what are we doing? Now, unlike a left-wing desire for justice and freedom, right-wing resentment demands power and status.
Who would have thought that something like this would ever happen? The goddamn Nazis with the tiki torches.
This fantasy promises a select group of people a world where they'll finally reclaim the power and respect they deserve, in which they're superior.
I don't think, I mean, like, I think if you grow up to be a fucking 19-year-old goddamn neo-Nazi, and a lot of people, their parents had no way in shape or form pressured them that way. It's mostly the online. I think that you were missed, right? There were opportunities for somebody to step in and say, hey, this is how we act, this is how we speak, this is what we should do, and the reasons why. And instead, it was just like they were ignored and they found their own thing. I don't think we have generational Nazis, or at least that doesn't seem to be the case when we look back on it, from a lot of these young, radicalized guys. But who would have ever thought that we'd have fucking thousands of them marching with tiki torches? I think there's probably been a bunch of people that they interacted with that could have had a chance to step up and been like, hey, you know, this is what a real man is. And maybe some of them actually wanted that. Maybe they have hate and want to be, but that's still a fucking learned. I don't know. It's hard to say. But I never thought we'd have thousands of fucking Nazis and tiki torches marching through Charlottesville. Seems like something's failed there.
intelligence will be recognized and in which women will desire and serve them. As McManus writes, for a certain kind of alienated young person, this may be a satisfying fantasy. It is not a serious politics. And it's worth noting this fantasy has moved beyond traditionally right-wing spaces, with formerly left-wing podcast Red Scare talking about the ideas of Yarvin and the Integralist with an earnest enthusiasm.
And he's literally just like a nerdy and nice and horny Gen X guy with a gorgeous bob.
You know, to Yarvin's delight, it seems like maybe some of the cool kids are actually going to invite him to their lunch table.
Is that useful to pass on? Or?
We can find them. They're on Twitter.
Yeah, they're all on Twitter. Yeah.
All right. We've got some drama to cover. This has been Wisecrack. You can check out the rest of the video and other videos he does. It seems like a pretty cool channel. I subscribed. Here we go. We've got some drama to cover. So if you've been around the channel long enough, you guys, anybody remember Griftbusters? Griftbusters was a show we did way back in the day. I started covering these people like Charlie Ward was probably the biggest one, and Scott McKay and other people like that. And then I found out that other people were covering them. And then we went into, with these other people that cover them wanted to do a show together. And we had Griftbusters. And then we tried to reboot Griftbusters, and that worked for a little bit. M. Seeker and Intel Lady and a bunch of people. That kind of broke up or whatever. Didn't do so well. It ended. It was fun while we did it, but it kind of ended. And then after that, M. Seeker kind of went in his own way. And then we had the Veritas machine, right? Tony with the Veritas machine. He's actually the guy who lashed out at somebody in his chat for talking shit about me. He's like, he's a veteran with no legs, you know. That was funny, and we had a good time. And then beyond that, I kind of did my own thing. And then later on, Corn Diff and Tony hooked up for a show, and I was on Tony's show a couple times. We actually had like a weekly standing thing. It only lasted a couple weeks, but I learned about a lot of new people that I didn't know. And Tony went on to, so Tony lives out in California, and he went on to like covering a lot of Scientology and stuff, and got in with the Scientologist crowd and then got out with the Scientologist crowd, and had a lot of back and forth and a lot of drama going on. And that is some stuff that I backed away from. Okay. When I just pulled myself, I couldn't tell what was going on, and I just pulled myself away. Now from the 30,000 feet view, I've been watching and keeping up with or whatever, and it seems like a lot of strange stuff is going on over there. So there's a claim, I don't know how true this is, there's a claim that, you know, Tony hooked up with a nice young lady who he did a podcast with, and she claims that she took out a loan to help Tony cover some expenses, and Tony refused to pay it back, and it cost her her home, cost her her house, and she has text messages basically with like, she's saying, hey, you're kind of being a piece of shit not paying this loan, and he's like, I don't like your attitude, so now I got the money, but I'm definitely not paying it. Like, that was pretty crazy. And then he's fighting back and forth with these other Scientologists about who's the best person or other anti-Scientologists about who's the best to cover anti-Scientology. Because they're supposedly all against it, and people are saying you actually are for Scientology. You're a person paid by Scientology, a disruptor paid by Scientology, and his accusations. And then him and a kid get into it, a minor. The guy's name's, I think, it's like Solomon or something. So a minor gets involved, and that's not good, right? So that kind of goes back and forth, and there's just a lot going on over there. Well, from the minor being involved, eventually a restraining order is placed against Tony. This would be Zero Dark Tony, the Veritas Machine, whatever you call him. A restraining order gets placed against Tony, and he's not supposed to be talking about it, saying anything about it, going anywhere near him, blah, blah, blah. And it seems like, according to the prosecutor, that restraining order is violated several times. So then, from what I've just caught up on today, the restraining order is violated. Tony and his lawyer, who doesn't sound like a very good lawyer because he lied to the judge, Tony and his lawyer go for Tony's restraining order against the minor and his mom. And they show up to court they don't want to go to court. Tony wants to appear remotely. Judge says, hell no, you got to appear in court. And Tony goes to court to get this restraining order put in place against the minor and his mom. Maybe valid, I don't know. But he shows up at court with like 20-some charges against him. So when he shows up to court, they're literally waiting on him with officers to arrest him. So this is a big creator. It's called Growing Up in Scientology. His name's Aaron, I think. We'll check out his video right quick.
Hey, Aaron, why didn't you say it the first time I said, hey, Aaron? Just pronounce Aaron. Did you not mess up, Aaron? Hey, Aaron is back, everyone. Welcome back for more SPTV, where every day is a great day not to be in a cult, and not a great day for Scientology agent Anthony D'Amato Jr., also known on the interwebs as Zero Dark Tony.
So they're calling him a Scientology agent because he's been trolling them so hard they believe he's paid by Scientology. I don't know if that's true or not.
Guys, the good news is Zero Dark Tony was just arrested. It seems like he was baited to show up to court by the judge in a different case. And at recess, the 7 officers were waiting for Tony to come out of the courtroom and take him into custody. So the good news is Tony's been arrested. Bad news is we're gonna have to put Aaron the Bounty Hunter on the back burner, guys. I was all psyched to head out to LA, hit the streets, bounty hunting. Zero Dark Tony gonna hog tie him and drag him into the state.
And these people make a ton of views and money covering Scientology shit.
But it seems like the police have already done it, but that's okay because there's more people out there I can bounty hunt. You guys know what I'm talking about. Okay, so all right. So I got a text from Streets LA. He said, I just got off the, I'm going to censor the text a little bit. I just got off the phone with someone who was at the courthouse. Zero Dark Tony was just arrested during recess. The detective came to arrest him with 7 other cops.
Now, if you look up Tony, I'm telling you, I broke ties with him. I didn't know what was going on. I just backed off. I didn't say anything to him. I didn't cuss him out and leave and be like, you're a piece of shit. I just thought, man, this is getting kind of hot. I had a lot going on with my parents. This is around when my dad passed away, or my mom had already passed away right before my dad passed away. I backed off, did my own thing. I had a lot going on. But if you go look him up, like on Reddit, there is a lot of negative attention he's been garnering for the last couple years about things he said, crazy things he's taken too far. There's this video they have of him basically doing a live stream, and people are like, oh, well, people were, I guess, were accusing him of being obsessed with this minor, Solomon. So he kind of plays into that, and he's like, yeah, I'm a pedo, and all I dream about is fucking Solomon all the time, and I got a boner about it, blah, 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 or whatever. Now, he was going to say that's a joke, but he never signified that was a joke. So then people started calling him a pedo and printing off flyers of him being that. Listen.
I had a dream that I raped Solomon in Nevada.
What kind of fucking freak?
Pedo, here I am. I'm dreaming about little boys.
Listen to this. Listen to this. This is him.
Yeah, I'm a pedo. Here I am. I'm dreaming about little boys. You know what? I woke up this morning after a dream about a little boy. That's right. I had a boner. I had a boner and I put some frozen grapes up my butt. I mean, seriously? Wait, is that serious to people? Like when I make jokes and talk about rape and that I dream of Jeannie and that I dream of vacations with Solomon on the French Riviera? What's wrong?
So based on this, some people printed out some flyers saying that he was dangerous, that he was stalking a child, he was harassing a child, that he had admitted to be a pedo. And they put him up. Now, Tony goes out and poses with them, right? Laughing, smiling, dancing around them to make content. Like, he's not bothered by them. But now he's trying to tell the court he's in fear for his life. Just a lot of stuff is going on with Tony.
Cops. All of the cops came from the Wilshire division on the other side of the city. They didn't...
I do know this. He was very, very, very mean to some people that used to support me. I don't know if they still do. They used to support me. After the breakup between the Griftbusters, he said some fucking absolutely horrible shit to some people who still supported. They didn't say anything to him. They just kept supporting M. Seeker. So him and M. Seeker had a falling out behind the scenes of Griftbusters, right? That's what kind of shut it all down. And he wanted me to pick sides. I'm like, I'm not doing that. You know, whatever. I don't need Griftbusters. I'll go my own way. And he was very, 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 very mean to some people who never said shit to him but they just kept supporting M Seeker of Truth, right? Like horrible shit about people's family dying, and he hoped they fucking this and raping people. It was just crazy shit he said. I didn't care for that. That's why I took like fucking 2 years off from talking to him. Then he popped up one day and I was like, yeah, I'll hop on your show, whatever. And then it just immediately went back in the drama and shit again.
Even use local LAPD. They brought their own divisions. Seems like the judge had reeled him in like a fish. So guys, I'm sure many of you guys have no idea what I'm talking about. But
so the judge forced him to show up to this case, it seems like, just so they could arrest him.
Anthony D'Amato Jr. is a guy who I did a video about last month or so, talking about some information I had gotten from an insider that Tony was being paid by Scientology through its front group, CCHR.
Now, you can never believe this. I'm just going to go ahead and tell you. An insider contacted him and said they accuse everybody in this community of Scientology haters. They accuse everybody else of being paid by Scientology. Everybody. So you can't believe that, but it could be true.
To basically just mercilessly attack every former Scientologist on YouTube. And I did a video about that. So he's just a guy. He's just a guy who's basically...
Tony told me at one time when we were sitting backstage that he didn't care. He was just trolling everybody. And even if they fucking hated him, he got more attention. So he would say the most outrageous shit just because it got attention and it got views, and it did. He had some big shows at one time.
He's on YouTube. He's on the other streaming platforms, and he just does nothing but content just trying to destroy every former Scientologist on YouTube. And he's been doing it for like a year and a half now. And as someone who understands YouTube analytics and how many dollars per 1,000 views is average on YouTube and how many thousands of views Tony's videos normally get, which is close to zero, it's not possible for someone to dedicate their life to such an unpopular activity while making absolutely no money doing it. So it was good to get some confirmation that he was getting paid by Scientology. He, of course, disputes that, but he would dispute it, wouldn't he? There was another video I did.
And I guess to throw a wrench in the thing, Scientology does do this, though. They'll find creators and have them come out. They set up entire websites with like fake fucking charging documents and claim people molested their cousin and make fake evidence and put it. They won't claim it publicly with their own name, but they'll pay people to do it and share it and set up the websites and shit. They do smear campaigns. Scientology absolutely does smear campaigns on people that bother them too much.
Did recently where I detailed the 26 counts that Tony was facing, all counts against a minor. The minor is a young man by the name of Solomon, who's been part of the Scientology protest movement out there in LA. And for some reason, Tony just really had his sights set on Solomon in a way that was really, to put it mildly, it was harassment. It was stalking. It was also extremely...
and basically the way he did it was, let's say he had a falling out with this guy. He would call this guy out and be like, I think he's paid shill. He's lying. He's doing this, blah, blah, blah. Anybody that defends this guy, he would go after them. Anybody defends that guy, he'd go after them. Anybody defends that person, he'd go after them. And it just basically made them all his enemy.
Vulgar.
Pretty quickly.
Solomon succeeded in getting a restraining order against Zero Dark Tony. And Zero Dark Tony, or Tony.
Here's what's crazy. Solomon gets a restraining order against Tony. And in L.A., that comes, just like in Tennessee, I had 48 hours to surrender my firearms. In L.A., you got 24 hours to surrender your firearms. So they come back to court a couple days later, and the judge is like, you didn't surrender your firearms. Tony says, yes, I did. Tony's lawyer lies to the judge and says he surrendered his firearms, and here's the proof. Here's a business card from the cop he surrendered his firearms to. A lawyer lied to the judge about it. And the judge is like, that's not how it works. You surrender them through the court. It's cataloged, serial numbers, times, dates, everything's cataloged. And the judge is like, and the lawyer's like, no, we gave them to this cop at a different time. He gave his guns to this cop. But the cop didn't log it, didn't write it down, didn't say, no, you're lying to me. They both lied. So the judge then labeled them within the court system, Tony and his lawyer, as non-credible witnesses. So no matter what Tony's defense is now, when he goes to testify about all this shit he's been doing, he's labeled as a non-credible witness, and so is his lawyer.
D'Amato Jr. Proceeded to violate the restraining order just dozens and dozens and dozens of times. And so the charge that he was facing was relating to that. Now, believe it or not, Zero Dark Tony then went...
I tried to, I think it would be at this point, maybe it was before. But I know now at this point that me not covering it is doing it just because I had a relationship with Tony and it might make me look worse for the shit that I did with Tony and the shows I've been on or whatever. I probably should have covered it sooner, to be honest with you. But I was just trying to stay the fuck away from it, right? I quit answering phone calls. I quit responding, not going on the show. I was just trying to stay away from it. But it is fucking wild now. He has like 26 fucking charges for harassing a minor. He's lying to the fucking judge and the cops. He's getting arrested at court. Like, I don't know what to do other than cover it at this point.
And recently, like in the last couple weeks, to try to get a restraining order against Solomon and Solomon's mother. And so there was a court hearing yesterday where Tony did not appear. He claimed that he's disabled, he has a disability, he's afraid for his life and all these things. So I think he was appearing remotely. I'm a little shaky on the details.
He claimed he had vertigo, so he couldn't show up to court.
But he wasn't in court. Obviously, his lawyer was in court. And the judge basically said, yeah, I'm not buying what you're saying. You need to be here in court tomorrow. He goes, I've seen your videos. You don't seem to be afraid of any of these people. You don't seem to have any.
She wasn't arrested on her way to the U.S. She was arrested in Dubai, but I don't think she had any intention of continuing on to the U.S. She had a connecting flight. She wasn't supposed to be there long. She left the fucking airport and just tried to start living in Dubai and got arrested.
Any disability that would prevent you from showing up to court, and you absolutely need to be here tomorrow. And so Tony showed up today. And I think Streets
I've been keeping up with it.
Right on the money when he says it looks like it was a setup, right? Like, are the police all really paying such close attention to this restraint?
Oh, I didn't know that's who you were. Yeah. When that's the first time I was like, I cannot talk to this guy. I can't fucking be around him. When he was like, I could pay you back, but I'm not going to because I don't like your attitude. You fucking, oh God, that shit was fucking crazy.
Restraining order hearing. Like, no, I feel like it was a coordinated thing. The police, I mean, I'm completely speculating, obviously. The police wanted to get this guy. Maybe they asked the judge, please make sure he shows up to court. I mean, I don't know. Is it even possible for you guys to understand the legal system better than I do, which is none?
The way I see it from the outside looking in, and maybe there's facts that like I don't know about, is he ruined a woman's life who he was in a relationship with, and he convinced to take out a loan and then refused to pay her back. And then when she finally, after months and months and months and months and months of him not making the payments, she's like, hey, publicly called him out after trying to do it privately and him saying the most horrible shit I could imagine to her. He calls it out. She says something publicly, and he starts a public smear campaign. Like, what the fuck?
Not at all. It's totally possible that this was a coordinated effort to get him to show up so that the police could arrest him, right? Because that's a really great story, and that's the story that I'd like to believe was completely true. So now what I'm wondering, because I haven't seen any of the other people who are at the courthouse go live yet. I'm wondering if they're just going to arrest him and book him and let him go. Like he was arrested during court recess. Was the hearing supposed to continue on? So he was.
There's actually this video. I think I shared it over here. Hold on. There's an interview with him in this one.
Connect to the court.
We'll skip through some of the early part.
That's why we're here.
So this guy's name is Dodge Landsman, I guess.
Outside, apparently intimidated Kib. I don't really think it's intimidation to see.
So he showed up to the courthouse to see if Tony shows up this morning.
He claims it was hard to watch the ET talk about it only because he talked for 1 minute and then go silent for 3 minutes. Tank says, I have no apology to issue, Tank. I have none whatsoever. All I'm saying is that EDT is not a pedophile in the legal sense. And that if you call him a pedophile, it could be considered defamation technically in court.
Unless he called himself a pedophile and you're going off what he said, which is their defense at this point. Now, Tony claims that video of him calling himself a pedophile and saying he's attracted to Solomon, he fucks him in the ass or whatever. He claims that that's AI. It's not AI. Like, he can claim it's a joke and parody, and maybe they didn't get the joke. It's not AI.
The thing, it's like you could say somebody is not that, and perhaps that's accurate, but the vast majority of people who are normal people who aren't interested in kids don't constantly bring up that topic thrice a day. So, I think he's into kids.
I think he would argue that it's a joke, it's parody, it gets attention, it gets views, it gets whatever, but
he's acted upon it.
Still wild to say.
Legal sense. Bummer. Wow. He is there.
All right, so here's where he shows up.
All I'm saying is in the very legal sense. And again, people can call him whatever they want. I don't give a fuck. Oh, he's there. Hey, Mr. Tony. Can I get an interview? He's actually here. I can't get an interview? Bummer. Wow. He is there. Maybe after. That was him. Well, first time I'm wrong. He might win this. Wow, all right, there he is, the devil himself. He didn't even say hi to me.
What's up, Marianne?
Rude. I felt that was very rude. There he is, he showed up. This will be interesting. I'm a little disappointed he showed up.
He comes back out in just a second.
I'm not going to be the guy to do that, but just so people know, he is officially inside the courtroom, so if somebody wants to contact somebody who, he's in the courtroom, so now you guys know, and he has warrants, and he's in the courtroom, so
the guy says he has warrants, he's in the courtroom. If someone wants to reach out directly, there you go. And I don't know if someone did or if it was set up from the get-go. I don't know, but it happened.
Again, ZDT is inside the courtroom. Again, if people want to take action whatever way they feel is appropriate to take action with a man walking inside the courtroom with a multitude of warrants, they can. But again, guys, just FYI, for anybody who wants to take action, ZDT is inside the courtroom. He is inside the courtroom. That's big news. Wrong gals, wrong about this. Better get a video. He might very well get arrested.
People are literally saying he doesn't have warrants. That's a lie because that's what Tony's been telling people. But obviously he did. You could just look him up.
Wait until you get called in as a witness. That hasn't happened yet so far. That is yet to happen. I'm shocked too. There he was. Tiny in real life. Appreciate your report. Thank you, Florence. You slandered him. I don't think I slandered shit. You really need to go watch that street. He says, Wild Coconuts. You are wrong, says Dash my grandma. Dodge will get you for a lie. You're not wrong about anything. I didn't think he'd show up. I wasn't lying about it. I guess I am wrong. Right, that's true. I don't think God will get me for lying. I wasn't lying, though. I was wrong, but I wasn't lying. I said, I don't know if he'll show up or not. I said, I didn't think he would show up, and he showed up. That ain't lying. But he's in the courtroom. So again, if anybody wants to take action, there's a man with a multitude of warrants walking in the courtroom. Again, I'm not going to do that. That's not my jurisprudence. But anybody else, ZDT is in the courtroom. Wrong again. I was wrong. We outside waiting. Wonder if Streets will show up. That would be great. That would be fun. Counting on you, Dodge, to bring us every detail.
He comes back out for an interview. Just give it a second.
For a moment, you tell you something. Dodge, if you're respectful, he may chat with you. I'd be productive conversation with that guy. I saw walking tree stuff, yeah. Oh, now the news is ZDT showed up, so he's ever showed up because he hasn't told the truth. Does he need an RO if he way back to the project? Sure. Good thing to look at. Locked. So I'll look at each and every one of your comments if I can. Big Dog says clown. Sure. Speed walking. Yeah, I know. I'll make sure that you get it to the right address. Because I know you guys are one-trick ponies. And you're the game, and you make a prognostication. You're a sports analyst. You're Stuart Scott, and I'm a lying piece of shit because I thought the other team would win, and the Clippers won, and I issue what the fuck? What the beast? What's nervous against our groups? He says he's fearful. He's a fearful little baby. He's fearful. He's getting our own. But, it's not going to be me to put him in jail. But if anybody else wants to call, ZT is in the courtroom, and he has on his punch on. There you. That's all right. Hey, how are you? Yeah, let's talk. By all means. By all means. Juan is comfortable on his knees. Ain't he ever? Hey, how are you? Yeah, let's talk. I appreciate that. I got to just go check in. Nice to meet you. How are you? Nice to meet you. Good. How you doing? Good. You're not as tall as I thought. Neither are you. That's all right. Hey. Well, hey, I appreciate the guys to do the interview. Thank you. It's an honor to meet you. Yet? Am I on? Yes, you're on. You're live. Hey, everybody, greetings. Welcome to the Los Angeles County Hill Street Courthouse. How you feeling today? Feel pretty good. I mean, I think you'll probably get it. Well, look. I think this has been a big mess from a lot of people that have taken something a little bit too far and taken it a little bit too seriously. But what we're seeing today is,
Now, Tony had a problem before when we were doing Griftbusters. Somebody came forward, and there was like this minor that he had literally doxxed and threatened to kill and all kinds of shit, and the cops had to be involved. And he said some horrible shit about this kid and his mom. And he's a minor, right? And when he says they're taking it too far, putting him in danger, what about what he's already done that caused this reaction?
Look, if I could do it over again, would I do it differently? Sure.
It's like we both have pistols. I shoot you, you shoot me back, and I say, I can't believe you shot me.
Did I say some things that were outrageous, inappropriate, and vile? Absolutely. But when you get to join, step back.
No, you're good. You're perfect. Yeah, I'll just look and make sure we got good view of you.
How's my light?
Your light's good. Let me. Now you look even better. Perfect.
Here, let me get the shade here.
Cool. Whatever works.
I am
He's carrying around a Bluetooth speaker. I don't know what that's about.
So essentially, we have a situation where, this could have been solved a long time ago, very peacefully and without all this hubbub, But you're looking at a situation where you just can't call somebody. There's free speech, and I don't ever buck when someone, like when you talk about me and I'm not going to sit there and go nuts and crazy.
Appreciate it. Sure.
It's
Likewise. Likewise. Yeah.
You talk shit, we talk shit. Yeah. That's part of the game. But when you get to a point where you are creating a threat environment for somebody, and look,
a threat environment.
Somebody who even likes what I said. Okay. But
I don't even like what I say.
Felt like I was backed into a corner. I was angry. I'm a human being, you know. And if I could do it over again, I would do it differently. But these are the consequences, and there are some other actions that are going to be forthcoming. All right.
Makes sense. All right, cool. Thank you. I appreciate it. Much respect.
Talk to you after. He never got the after. This is the last time he was seen not in handcuffs.
Seriously. Take care.
By the way, I've personally heard Tony call maybe thousands of people a pedophile.
That was interesting. Well, you gotta give a guy credit. The fact that he even talked, I give him a lot of credit for that. Josh got the interview of the century. I was gonna ask about the arrest, but he was
Let's see. Somebody's got clips for it, I'm sure. Arrested. Efforts to get a restraining order against Solomon. Recess rundown. So this is the way it happened, I guess.
Hey guys, I am back with part 2, and we'll have part 3 later in the day.
Oh, maybe I should have started at part 1. Is this the one I watched earlier?
Where do I even begin with this? Well, I guess I'll begin with a whorish push for money. If you want to help me out with GoFundMe, with Venmo, or with Cash App, post-CDT arrest, that'll be a big help for motels and everything. So let's not bury the lead. What happened today? Well, it is official. I saw it with my own eyes, and no, I did not get footage because, as Jessica Palmadessa learns, you're not supposed to record inside the courtroom. And then I was told by the bailiff that I had to wait inside the courtroom as ZDT was getting arrested. But Zero Dark Tony, it is official. ZDT has gotten arrested. Very, very big news. Yelena put in the effort for that. I had nothing to do with it. I said I wasn't going to be the guy to try to do anything like that. Yelena did. She wanted to protect her kid, put this creepy guy in jail, and she did that, and did it quite effectively and quite beautifully. So ZDT is officially now in the hands of police. Guys, I'm bad at research. If you want me to go to the precinct, I could potentially, if somebody wants to put in the comments, I'm sure he's probably done being processed by now because I had to sit and wait for the rest of the court proceedings. But if you happen to know where it is or the schedule, I don't know about the logistics of the police stuff. A lot of you guys do let me know, and maybe I'll try to jaunt on over later today. Maybe I'll take the dog. No result on the TRO, of course, because what happened, to do kind of a play-by-play, and I'll read it for you as well. There was a 15-minute break. Essentially, it was about the verification of a video. Tamer was trying to say, what was introduced into evidence is that ZDT called himself a pedophile. Thank you, Hero Not Zero Reddit. It looks like there was some research done on what they posted, and that was used, and that has pretty effectively convinced the judge. ZDT was saying that was artificial intelligence. He never said it. He denied it. Then Tamer, the attorney, wanted to confer with ZDT to perhaps try to disprove that the video was legitimate. So they both step outside, and waiting outside for them were about 5 police officers just waiting outside. And I saw the opening of the door, and they said, Mr. D'Amato, and they said, you're under arrest. I heard that, and then the bailiff went in and told me to come back in. So saw him get arrested, saw them say, you're under arrest. It's official. But of course, I am not going to record in the courtroom because I don't want to aid Tony's case.
Yeah, they were.
Anything.
It's a wild day.
Side. So I wanted to make sure to be very careful. So I'm sorry I lost that footage. A lot of you guys are upset, but I saw it with my own eyes. I'm sure you can see the court records. So it is official. Zero Dark Tony is arrested. What happened today in court besides for that? Well, to add good news upon good news, the judge has completely changed his perspective purely based, as I mentioned before, on the fact that ZDT was joking about being a pedophile. And essentially the judge said, well, now I'm completely have a different point of view, because even if you say that's a joke, how do you expect them to interpret that as a joke? And even
that's the price of doing deadpan jokes, right? If you don't come out and say this is a joke, or I'm just joking or something, if you just do these deadpan jokes, which is the comedy I like too, I make crazy jokes. I was super racist to Atsuko earlier. Everybody just ignored it, but I was. But you run the risk of people taking it seriously.
And if it is a joke, if somebody calls you a pedophile in response, well, you were calling them a pedophile as a joke. So them calling you a pedophile by that argument could also be considered a joke. So either the judge felt Solomon didn't know it was a joke, and understandably would get license to call him something that he called himself, or on the flip side of the coin, if ZDT was making a joke, then Solomon could have been making a joke in response, and therefore it is not harassment and is not worthy of a restraining order. I will.
It wasn't a joke, Atsuko.
The exact words the judge says, so you can really understand how he's feeling. But I would say, if yesterday I would say it's 80% likely ZDT would win. Listen, I thought if ZDT showed up, ZDT would win. I didn't expect him to show up, because look what happened. Exactly what I told you was going to happen. But even though he showed up, I still think he would have lost the case. Even if he showed up and even if he didn't get arrested, I still think he would have very well lost the case. End of story. Because Weber was a lot more convincing. Remember, the judge issued a tentative ruling saying, looking at this right now, it looks like I have valid grounds to grant a restraining order.
So his lawyer's name is like Tamer? and he's so bad they started calling him Timu Tamer.
But Mr. Weber, Solomon's attorney, had yet to question ZDT on the stand, and had yet to submit a lot of his evidence. There's a lot more new additional evidence submitted yesterday as well. So now that
all right, he's got notes.
We have the
Here we go.
We could look at not the exact transcript, but as close as I could try to get it. So one of the things that's interesting, in the beginning that was spoken about, is the judge didn't realize that. If you're under 18, what happens if you get a restraining order, that person has a restraining order against you until you turn 18.
What the fuck was that? What do you think it was? It was me being racist against you. I'm still very upset about COVID. And I have that right, okay?
So Solomon has 7 months until he turns 18, so maximum, the restraining order would be for 7 months. Once he turns 18, then ZDT, if he got it, could have applied to extend it, but it would only have lasted 7 months. That's it. So, gotta love the entertainment in the beginning. Mr. Lionel Hunt's over here. The judge says, Tamer shows up at 8:50. The judge says, I told you to show up at 8 for evidence. Next time you're late, I will sanction you.
So his lawyer was 50 minutes late.
So the judge already not happy. ZDT takes a stand. Mr. Weber is questioning him. Mr. Weber says to ZDT, did you bring documents today with you, like a written copy of the Child Protective Services report? And then Tamer cuts off. He says, that's not in my client's possession. Weber.
So, by the way, Tony says this thing that I don't know what qualifies him from this, but he's like one of these like mandated reporters, right? Of child abuse, neglect, whatever. Like a teacher is, right? In a lot of states, a teacher has to report if they think that, or a doctor or a nurse. For some reason, ever since I've known Tony, he claims that he is a mandated reporter. I don't know what he falls under that. So basically, he could be held liable if he didn't report it, if he had these ideas that a kid was being abused, neglected, whatever. But I don't know what qualifies him as that. But I have heard him say that a bunch of times.
Said ZDT, remember I'm just using the shorthand. He said Mr. D'Amato, but I'm using shorthand names for everybody so I can write quickly. Weber says, Mr. Weber, Solomon's attorney says, ZDT claims that he is a mandated reporter. Are you aware of this law? The judge cuts off. He says, we don't need to talk about this, the judge is saying. This is not really a credibility issue. He may have done some things that are harassing, but this is not relevant. And Mr. Weber says to the judge, we claim he's not credible about his distress. I mean, Mr. Weber is saying to the judge, we're claiming that the distress on ZDT's part is not credible. Weber says, are you familiar with the penal code of conduct of a mandated reporter? ZDT said, I am not. Mr. Weber says, Solomon's attorney says to ZDT, are you aware you're required to submit a written report? ZDT says, yes. Mr. Weber says to ZDT, yet you failed to make that report. Mr. Weber says, did you post a video yesterday? Oh, and this is another thing. One of the reasons he might lose is because of the shit he said literally yesterday. Like, literally yesterday, he shot himself in the foot. Again, you...
Oh, man, what did he post yesterday? I haven't been to his channel in months, dude. Was it a short? Probably. Maybe not. Videos. 8 months ago? Oh, he might be like on a backup channel. I don't know. He might be on Twitch. He might be on TikTok. I don't know. I haven't watched him in so long. Anyways, let's go back to it. Wrong one. Where are we even at, chat? Where do we park?
He is his own worst enemy in the purest form. ZDC says, I can't recall. Mr. Weber says, do you recall then saying,
You can't recall if you posted a video yesterday?
Weber saying to ZDT, do you recall then you saying that you call yourself a pedophile in a video? And then the video is presented. And there's a quote. They're trying to say, I have a video calling myself a pedophile. Well, I'm a pedophile. That is, so it's like he called it himself. And then the video continues, and Mr. Weber, sorry, Mr. Weber asks, end the video, Mr. Weber asks, what's the purpose of that statement? ZDT says in response, I said I was a swatter too, it's parody. Weber says, so you say, even if I am a pedo, so what? It's free speech. You said that. ZDT says yes. Weber said, you stated in a video. No, I said it on a live. I dream of raping little boys. What's wrong with that? ZDT says, I don't recall if I said that or not. The video is...
I don't recall if well, I've never said it, okay? Here it is. Fuck. He was streaming yesterday. Apex Legends, court certified. The title's Apex Legends, court certified. Oh, it's down. Okay. Video's now unavailable. It's made private. I'm not in depth enough to know about any of this. It's just wild.
was played. And he continues on about the quotes that I was just talking about. They played again. And Zero Dark Tony says, this could be AI. I could have said that. I think it's AI.
This could be AI. I think it's AI.
And then the judge remarks. He says, this is interesting. These are his words. Even in jest, Solomon might not be sophisticated enough to get your humor. A pedophile is only one who has an interest. So here's an interesting question. What is the definition of pedophile? I would say ZDT is not a pedophile because I don't think he is actively trying to have relationships with children, nor is he downloading any illegal material or trying to. I really don't think he is, and I don't think he's a pedophile in that regard. But that's in the same regard where I was talking about another famous figure. I said they were an abuser, not in the court of law. I don't think he's a pedophile in the court of law, but the judge makes this interesting distinction. No, you can't be arrested for that. But a pedophile, the definition of the term, which I did not know, the judge is saying, the definition of the term of a pedophile is only one who has an interest. Meaning, according to the judge, fits the description. And the judge says, how do you have Solomon's liability with this? And the judge says ZDT indicated his life was threatened because he was identified as a pedophile. And the judge is speaking. But he is running around calling himself a pedophile. I'm confused by ZDT's argument for the restraining order. Solomon is harassing you, and you've had threats. How do I separate that from ZDT's parody? That actually started the threats. Tamer responds, tries to cut in the attorney for ZDT. He says, it's a parody. He never said, I am a chomo. He said, if I was, and that's obvious from his inflection. The judge says, you're 100% wrong about this. The judge is saying to Tamer, you're 100% wrong. ZDT has to say it seriously. ZDT doesn't have to say it seriously for me to consider the statement. I think the court has enough info. I want to be clear. I don't want to short circuit the due process. And Tamer says, I need a continuance. I'll need time to find a video and also confirm and prove.
So his lawyer says, I need a continuance. I need time to file the video, confirm what was going on, review the video, blah, blah, blah. That's when they take a recess and they arrest Tony.
To you that the video listed is artificial intelligence. Sorry, guys, looking at and there's a whole conversation about
and it was a video from the day before. Like, I don't
ZDT. I mean, the whole conversation about Solomon's mother. And the judge essentially saying that this is ridiculous and that she shouldn't be part of it. And Mr. Weber, Solomon's attorney, after the first break says, Yelena has a video of ZDT saying that he's a pedophile and discussing Yelena in sexual graphic detail. The judge says to Tamer, if you have allegations made, but ZDT called himself, it's not really relevant. And then Tamer says, well, that was after Solomon started it. The judge says, you're not answering my question. Zero Dark Tony refers to himself in jest as a pedophile. How do you make Solomon's words threats versus a response to your humor? A reasonable person, remember this is all the judge speaking, a reasonable person might hear this and respond. Yesterday, I had no idea Zero Dark Tony made those statements. It changes the dynamic. Those are the words the judge used. It changes the dynamic for him. As for saying this is artificial intelligence, there's no proof that this is doctored. Tamer says the threats make a difference. My client has never touched a child. He talked about it in a theater-like manner. Tamer tries to get a continuance, the judge denies it. Judge says, what new evidence is there that we haven't discussed? Tamer says, I want to present videos of Yelena saying she's involved in this. Now, Weber's back on this. There's the back and forth with the judge. Weber's back with ZDT. Mr. Weber says, the attorney for Solomon says, you recall a video about Yelena? ZDT says, I do. The video shows. And it's ZDT saying, so why is this young boy at places by himself? And then he sings a song, Solomon's mom has got it going on. And he says, God, I want to fuck her. So, quoting from this, somebody said I had bad language.
So he says, why is this young boy who's 17 alone at places? Then he says, sings a song, Solomon's mom's got it going on. Then he says, God, I want to fuck her.
Guys, I'm just quoting ZDT's language. Tamer says, sorry, guys. And then we were asked, so did you say I have a boner? And yeah, I'm a pedophile. And ZDT says, I don't recall. And then another video plays.
That's that video I showed you at first where he says, yeah, I got a boner. Yeah, I'm a pedophile. All those things.
And it's ZDT saying, yeah, I'm a pedophile. I dream of little boys. Yeah, I have a boner. And Weber says, does that refresh your memory? And ZDT says, yes, I was singing parody songs. And Mr. Weber says, and ZDT, you did just post this, and you also posted another song. Speaking of songs, parodying Vogue, strike a pose, in front of the flyers, the so-called pedo flyers. So you were making the joke.
So flyers are put up, he's posed in front of them dancing.
Which indicates that he isn't that upset by the flyers, guys. Did you say... See, you said, look at this. Come take a look at this. You're drawing attention to it. Then there's a 15-minute break. Bam, as I talked about, ZDT gets arrested. Tamer says, Tamer comes storming in after he sees his client get arrested. He says, Your Honor, I need to talk to the judge. They made you a pawn in their game, Tamer is saying. You need to talk to the LAPD to stop this. And he's screaming. And the judge says, I don't have that authority. It looks like there's probable cause. Judge had nothing to do with any of this. Tamer says, probable cause are lies from these inauthentic videos. And the judge says, I have no authority to stop a warrant.
That's when he got arrested.
Comes in. just so the judge could be like, yeah, sorry, it was a valid arrest. The judge has one of the arresting officers actually come in the courtroom. And the judge says, so just to be clear, Mr. D'Amato is under arrest for an outstanding warrant. And the officer, I'll tell you his name, Garrett Briegel, G-A-R-E-T-T-B-R-I-E-G-E-L, Garrett Briegel. And Tabor says, let me see the warrant. And the judge just stops it. He says, I've heard enough. I can't do anything about this. I can't interfere with law enforcement. Tamer says, we agreed to a show of cause because of your order. And the judge says, yes. And he fought the appearance probably because of the warrant. I will schedule a continuance regarding the hearing. Whew. So, that's all she wrote.
So, look, I'm an idiot, right? I no longer get any of the views I used to. The fucking show doesn't make fucking any money now. Like, ever since I left MAGA and stopped doing this, maybe this is the best thing that's ever going to happen for Tony's career, and it's going to blow up and trolling, and this is the way to do it and get views or whatever. But it's just, it's too much for me, right? That's why I pulled myself away from it. It was just too much. Maybe it's all fake. I don't know. It was just crazy. And I feel like if I didn't cover it at this point, then it's like I'm intentionally avoiding it to like protect my reputation or something, which I'm not. This is the same reason that I stepped away fucking however long ago it was, because it was just too much. And then it was like perfect timing too. As soon as I stepped away, that's when all the shit about Dana came out. The girl that the money was allegedly stolen from and not repaid or whatever. And as soon as I stepped away and then saw that, I was like, I'm just done. I got my own stuff. I got too much stuff going on. It just seems wild to me that all of this is going on. I guess he went to jail. I don't know if he's been released, but that's why I haven't been doing shows with Tony. That's how Griftbusters broke up. All that shit is just, it's too much drama for me. I'll sit over here with my fucking 80-some viewers or whatever and just say, fuck it. The last thing I want to talk about is this tweet, which has kind of got a lot of people up in arms. I think it's pretty wild. So this is an astronaut. This is a literal ESA. It's like a European Space Alliance or whatever. Astronaut. Responding to a video where Hannity says, you're going to help rescue two astronauts. And Musk says they were left up there for political reasons, which is, we're going to watch that first.
You're committed to getting to Mars. You're committed to rescue. You're going to help rescue next month two astronauts that I think were abandoned. They dispute that in an interview.
At the president's request or instruction, we are accelerating the return of the astronauts, which was postponed kind of to a ridiculous degree.
They got left in space.
They've been there. They were supposed to be there 8 days. They're there almost 300.
Biden.
They were yes, they were left up there for political reasons, which is not good.
Okay, it's not good.
He claims they were left up there for political reasons. This is not true. Okay? This, if I can tell you anything, this is not true. If they were left up there for political reasons, the spaceship's already there. Dragon's already there. They would have brought him home on the very first day, or they'd have brought him home during this interview, or they'd have brought him home already. Okay? It's just not true. So this astronaut from Europe says, what a lie, and from someone who complains about the lack of honesty from the mainstream media. So, of course, Elon has to respond. He says, you are fully retarded. SpaceX could have brought them back several months ago. I offered this directly to Biden administration. They refused. Return was pushed back for political reasons, idiots. But let's read the actual response. It says, Elon, I have long admired you and what you have accomplished, especially with SpaceX and Tesla. You know as well as I do that Butch and Suni are returning with Crew 9, as has been the plan since September. This has already been the plan since September. They weren't left up there. They're not planning a rescue since September, because there was issues with different things. But it says, you are not setting up a rescue ship to bring them home. They are returning on the Dragon capsule that has been on the ISS since last September. Now, Elon doesn't respond to this in any way, shape, or form. Now, this is the truth. This is already planned out. They know it. The Biden administration knows it. The Trump administration knows it. Musk knows it. This has been the plan ever since this happened, right? If they were left up there for political reasons, they'd just bring them home right now. But obviously there's a plan in place. Hey, since this happened, you're just going to stay and return with the crew. Crew 9. And all that's been agreed to since September. But randomly, even though Elon doesn't respond to this, randomly later in the day, at 12:05 p.m., Elon Musk just suddenly decides that it's time to bring the International Space Station out of orbit. It's time to begin preparations for deorbiting the space station. It has served its purpose. There is very little incremental utility. Let's go to Mars. First of all, we're still learning all kinds of shit on the space station, long-term studies and all kinds of shit, right? The space station is used by multiple countries, all kinds of people. Elon Musk has a competing bid and wants to go to Mars or what the fuck ever, which I'm all for. Can we send him yesterday? But second of all, so he has this argument, and then unrelated, the guy who cuts all the funding for everything is like, that ISS, completely unrelated to this guy calling him a liar out in front of the public. Completely unrelated. Just like the FAA was unrelated, just like USAID was unrelated, just like the Inspector Generals was unrelated, just like every program he's already cut was unrelated. Completely unrelated. He's like, we don't need the ISS anymore. And you're not going to believe who already has a standing contract when it is time to deorbit the International Space Station, who has a standing contract for $843 million plus expenses to deorbit the International Space Station. I'll give you one guess. Completely unrelated, guys. Completely unrelated. $150 billion space station that is just floating, right? It's just all we have to do is upkeep it and do crew changes and shit. Weird. All right, guys. I'm out of here. Thank you all for joining us. Please consider supporting the show. Ever since I left the craziness of the MAGA movement, the wildness of the MAGA movement. By the way, I went back and put Twitter badges on all my fucking platform. It is an X. It's Twitter. It's got the tab at the top. It's got the fucking bird back. I refuse. Anyways, consider supporting the show at coldbeer.fund. I can't be out here getting arrested in the streets. Thank you guys for joining us. Thanks for being here. I'll be back tomorrow probably. Hopefully the weather breaks. It's still cold as fuck. The entire time I've been streaming, we went from 58 to 59 degrees with the heat on wide the fuck open. It's going to be an expensive month to stream. Thank you guys. I appreciate it. We'll see you around the next one. Have a good night. Love you. See you. Bye.
But I can tell you this about if this douchebag happens to see this particular show, you don't have the forking balls to call out the people on this planet by name and tell them exactly who they are and tell them the rest of the world who they are. You don't have the forking balls. You don't have the balls.
Okay, Scott.
Here we go, I think I started some shit. Listen off, it's about to get lit. Get the place in the best, you know that stage is set. You better buckle up, cause you ain't seen none yet. Here we go, I think I started some shit. Piss them off, it's about to get lit. Get the place in them beds, you know that stage is set. You better buckle up, cause you ain't seen nothing yet. And they say that I'm a lunatic. Well, listen, bitch, I came equipped with a quick wit and a 6 cents for the stupid shit. Where my true believers? Y'all need Jesus. Praise the Lord, head to the extreme. All these false fucking prophets who profit off of gossip. Worshipping drums, cocking, begging for a throat deposit. Swinging fucking meat hammers like four in a thong. He's strapped to the shaft, eating his chest like he's King Kong. Starving for attention, I'ma make your gut burst. I'll be your huckleberry, I can quench that thirst. Baby eating lizard people, alien sex. What's next? Trump in a dress, fucking Flynn on his desk. A retard in a vest, climbing up 5G towers. Cause you told him if he did, he'd get fucking superpowers.
Have a good night, everybody.
I think I started some shit. Piss them off, it's about to get lit. Get the place in them beds, you know that stage is set. You better buckle up, cause you ain't seen nothing yet. Here we go, I think I started some shit. Piss them off, it's about to get lit. Get the place in them beds, you know that stage is set. You better buckle up, cause you ain't seen nothing yet. I used to find clues too when I was high on shrooms. I found myself a tunnel that led to Jason Q's bedroom. Open his closet, I found.
By the way, stop saying that Ukraine should have fucking an election against Zelensky or with Zelensky. They're like, oh, the U.S. had one during the Civil War, during the Vietnam War, during the fucking World War II.
It's gonna be it.
Shut up. Dude, their own constitution
What? I'll get my file.
calls for them to not have elections during wartime.
Stop.
Why would they violate? They're not the U.S. Why would they violate their own constitution
Oh, give me a.
to appease Trump?
Here we go, I think I started some shit. Piss them off, it's about to get lit. Get the place in them beds, you know that stage is set. You better buckle up, cause you ain't seen nothing yet. Here we go, I think I started some shit. Piss them off, it's about to get lit. Get the place in them beds, you know that stage is set. You better buckle up, cause you ain't seen nothing yet.
Good night, guys.
Down goes Nino. Please say it isn't so. Got him backed up on the ropes, trying to ramp.
I hope Tony gets whatever he's got going on straightened out.
Doing so.
I don't know what else to say.
Hands on his shoulders, they ringing his bell.
Have a good one.
Frog News Network.